8 years before his ruin, Hirasawa Kazuki, an unremarkable Japanese university student, suddenly received a strange notice that would upend his ordinary, uneventful life completely. Confused and disoriented, he found himself standing somewhere unfamiliar, desperately wondering why his surroundings had changed and how he had ended up in this strange place. Nearby, a stern noblewoman demanded to know how someone planned to take responsibility, while a mother and child begged for forgiveness before an intimidating armored figure. The mother tightened her protective embrace around her trembling son, both repeatedly apologizing, while another servant nearby was harshly scolded and dismissed as worthless. Kazuki realized with growing dread that this scene matched something achingly familiar, recognizing it as an event straight out of Brave Hearts, the console RPG he obsessed over. Brave Hearts was a beloved fantasy game featuring flashy battle skills, memorable character dialogue, hidden dungeons, and countless extra events, despite its otherwise straightforward main story. Having replayed it more times than he could count, Kazuki had memorized nearly every line of dialogue, convincing himself there was no way he could be mistaken. Yet standing before him were Clara the servant, Jessica the wife, and Hayden, head of the Stokes family, leaving him questioning why fictional characters were suddenly moving and real. Watching two bodies lying motionless nearby, he admitted aloud how unsettling it felt to be thrown so abruptly into such a grim, depressing scene. He recognized this as a flashback event where Clara, mother of the story's heroine, meets a violent end at the hands of the Stokes family's eldest son, Harold. Confused about where Harold himself was supposed to be, he assumed the boy was likely being comforted by his worried mother somewhere close within the scene. Moments later, a young Harold moved to strike down the frightened maid Colette, ignoring her desperate pleas until a commanding voice suddenly ordered him to stop. The voice, Kazuki realized in horror, belonged to his own mouth, moving without his consent, as it calmly offered to execute the terrified young girl himself. Playing along with this unfamiliar body's cruelty, he suggested using Colette as a training dummy instead, insisting it was a kinder purpose than staining the room with her blood. His father praised the idea, sneering at the girl as a filthy half-breed unworthy of sympathy, while another figure ordered her thrown into the dungeon below. Even as his family laughed and agreed the girl deserved such treatment for her impure heritage, Kazuki felt his own fists clench in helpless, silent fury. He finally understood the horrifying truth. He now inhabited the body of Harold Stokes, the most hated villain in all of Brave Hearts, doomed to die. Harold's fate, he remembered clearly, was to be slain eventually by Justice, the game's true final boss, once the hero's party grew powerful enough to face him. Alone afterward, Kazuki desperately questioned whether this was merely a vivid dream or if he had truly possessed Harold's body against his own will and understanding. Before he could think further, a polite knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts, and Norman, the family's dutifully sensible butler, entered to consult him about something urgent. Norman studied Kazuki's silence with visible concern, gently asking whether he might be feeling unwell before Kazuki brushed off the odd atmosphere hovering between them. Kazuki insisted repeatedly that he was perfectly fine, forcing a smile while Norman continued eyeing his strained expression with obvious, lingering doubt about his well-being. Norman privately noted how strange it felt that Harold, usually quick to voice displeasure, now spoke with unfamiliar restraint, his harsh manner oddly filtered and muted. Seizing the opening, Kazuki begged Norman to lessen whatever punishment awaited Clara, startling himself when his own mouth spoke those words without conscious permission. He realized his body had simply repeated dialogue from the game automatically, yet resolved that saving Clara mattered regardless, since her life now rested entirely with Harold. According to the original story, Clara dies burned by Harold's magic, leaving her daughter Colette orphaned, exiled, and eventually protected by the hero Liner's family. Kazuki understood that rescuing Clara now would drastically alter his future encounter with Liner, though lacking real power made avoiding that meeting feel far safer overall. He worried that avoiding every cruel action Harold was scripted to commit might cause dangerous deviations, potentially leading him toward unknown deaths outside the game's original story. Determined instead to preserve the story's general shape while steering its conclusion somewhere more acceptable, he clenched his fist and quietly resolved to try anyway. Turning back to Norman, Kazuki confirmed that Clara was indeed the servant in question, admitting he genuinely wished to help her despite his limited authority here. Norman firmly told him that if he truly wanted to save her, he needed to act first and explain his reasoning to others only afterward. Norman ushered him out impatiently, and Kazuki collapsed backward onto his bed afterward, wondering aloud whether he had acted too hastily without thinking things through. Lying there, he considered whether dying now inside this world might somehow send him back safely to his own ordinary life as a student. He quickly dismissed that risky idea, reasoning that dying here could mean dying in reality too, before knocking over nearby scrolls and bottles while thrashing anxiously, Sorting through the mess, he noticed the scattered books were written in Japanese, along with an empty life potion bottle and red marble identical to game items. Reading through Harold Stokes' notes, he decided his safest strategy was following the script loosely while carefully avoiding any needlessly cruel or villainous actions. He also wanted to confirm whether this world truly matched Brave Hearts exactly, or whether it might instead be some similar, yet slightly different alternate reality. Standing up with new resolve, he declared he would gather another card to play, determined to break every death flag standing between him and survival. Standing before the tower prison, Kazuki asked how many people were currently imprisoned within, satisfied when the guard confirmed only one for now. Ordering the flustered guards to remain outside and prevent anyone from entering, Kazuki startled the frightened staff as he pushed past them toward the cells. He instructed the accompanying knight to wait outside, insisting he alone needed to speak privately with the prisoner held somewhere deeper within the dungeon. Steadying his nerves in the dim stairwell, he approached the cell where Clara sat quietly, bracing himself before finally stepping into the light. He confirmed her identity as Clara Ameller, watching her flinch and address him hesitantly as Harold Sama, before stating he had come for another matter entirely. Questioning her calmly, he learned she had one daughter named Colette, having eloped years earlier and lost her husband to illness, leaving her estranged from family. Understanding now why Colette had no other relatives besides her mother, Kazuki quietly processed how deeply isolated the child would become without Clara. He continued gathering details, learning Colette was 9 years old and had no training whatsoever in magic or martial arts of any kind, piecing together information he hadn't previously known about this scene. He concluded everything matched what he remembered from the original story reasonably well. As he turned to leave, satisfied with what he'd gathered, Clara suddenly called out desperately, begging him to wait before he could depart completely. She pleaded that should she die, Colette would be left utterly without a single relative, unable to survive alone at such a young age. Both women begged tearfully, insisting the innocent child had done nothing wrong and deserved mercy, pleading repeatedly for Kazuki to reconsider Colette's uncertain fate. Kazuki coldly dismissed Clara's fear as foolish and unsightly before walking away, though privately he had only been attempting clumsily to offer reassurance. Reflecting afterward, he admitted his harsh voice made comforting her nearly impossible, wishing he could have expressed genuine sympathy instead of cold indifference. Returning to the mansion, Norman greeted him carrying several rolled documents, prompting Kazuki to ask curiously what exactly he was holding. Norman explained he'd brought a detailed map of Stokes' territory along with information regarding nearby settlements, hoping it might prove useful somehow. Hesitantly, Norman asked how exactly Kazuki intended to save the servant, suggesting relocating her outside Stokes' territory might be their safest available option. Kazuki declared he didn't mind sacrificing some laborers or taxpayers to other nobles, agreeing that fleeing beyond Stokes' influence offered the greatest safety. Studying the map closely, he located Blosh Village, recognizing it immediately as the place where the hero liner's family currently resided together. Considering practicalities like travel restrictions and Clara's need for basic resources, Kazuki realized this location offered the highest likelihood of her eventually meeting Liner. Kazuki calculated the practical costs of relocating Clara, realizing a travel permit and wagon would be needed if Colette accompanied her mother. Norman watched thoughtfully, admitting he'd always assumed Harold would remain indifferent like his parents, yet now saw genuine concern shaping the boy's careful planning. Norman wondered privately whether Harold's earlier boasting about using Clara for magical experiments had actually been intended to secure her somewhere temporarily safe. Instead, reconsidering further, Norman questioned whether Harold's silence toward evicting citizens stemmed from prioritizing Clara's survival above the nobility's usual selfish concerns entirely. He reflected bitterly that Hayden and his wife were elitist purebloods who viewed anyone beneath their status as lesser, refusing to see commoners as people. Norman explained that without stable income opportunities elsewhere, relocating Clara risked worsening her situation, since living costs elsewhere exceeded even Stokes' territory's expenses. Watching Harold's determined expression, Norman felt quiet hope stirring, believing this boy alone might finally change the Stokes family's cold, uncaring legacy. The following day, Kazuki stood alone in a clearing, steadying his breathing before attempting to summon dangerous flames meant to fake Clara's death. Raising his hands skyward, he unleashed the incantation for Flame Cram, watching brilliant fire erupt violently from his outstretched palm into the air. Startled by the spell's overwhelming power, he panicked upon realizing the resulting inferno looked far more destructive and uncontrollable than anything shown in-game. Despite his nervousness, he admitted feeling secretly thrilled at actually wielding real magic, though the required chanting still embarrassed him considerably each time. Refocusing on his plan, he understood he needed to scorch the area convincingly enough that witnesses would believe Clara had truly burned to ashes, satisfied that a suitably flashy pillar of fire would sell the illusion of her death without anyone questioning the corpse's mysterious absence afterward. That night, resolved and unwavering, he reminded himself failure could not be tolerated, since Clara was now a real person depending entirely on him.
Harold and Colette warily stepped through the woods at dusk, alert for any feasible threats. Excitedly, Colette's child notices her mother across the field running with joyful anticipation. Clutching her child tightly, Colette senses comfort while other people observe quietly, watching them warmly. Abruptly, a person appears, proposing Harold and Colette a challenging choice that causes strain. The person warns them clearly leave at once or address certain death without any feasible escape. Uncertain, Colette regards Harold, wondering the meaning and significance of the risky offer presented. Harold describes ending their lives now would be easier, expressing urgency and grave worry, resolved to survive. Colette declines death, insisting she and her child continue housing together. Harold hands Colette a critical object, establishing it as essential for their safe departure. She is instructed to keep it safe, protecting it and passing it properly later. Puzzled and wary, Colette has difficulty to understand Harold's instructions, sensing both anxiety and hesitation. Harold directs her to give the object to a person trustworthy, capable of providing protection. He stresses caution, warning them to prevent detection while emphasizing the dangers of any mistakes. Bowing deeply, Colette, her child, and allies show respect and gratitude for Harold's direction. Watching quietly, Harold observes them depart, mindful of the dangers that linger around them. Tracking Harold's orders, Norman walks onward first, allowing other people to trail cautiously behind him cautiously. Standing alone, Harold considers the gratitude expressed towards him regardless of only performing a small position. He remembers accidentally colliding with Colette, causing her to fall, sensing slightly guilty for incident. Harold senses comfort watching their quiet state, acknowledging his plan successfully ensured their security. Approaching Harold, an elder evaluates whether to intervene or allow him to complete final duties. Harold braces himself for conflict, focusing his eyes on the threat approaching with careful accuracy. Stunned, the elder has difficulty to accept Harold's decisive deeds, unsure about the repercussions nearby. Using flame cram, Harold strikes powerfully, unleashing a devastating assault against his incoming adversary. Quietly, Harold observes how his behavior appears to shift naturally within the ongoing narrative. Alone, he considers, grateful Norman is securely away, aware other people perceive his deeds differently. Astonished, Harold doubts why the elder remains, ignoring prior instructions and lingering nearby quietly. He maintains the elder forget all watched incidents today, requiring strict secrecy without exceptions. Reflecting quietly, Harold recognizes the elder cautiously concealed vulnerabilities, protecting other people through deliberate deception. Harold recognizes the elder's loneliness, understanding the deliberate avoidance of conflict ensured everybody's ongoing security. Aware, Harold notices how the elder's deception shields both his parents and the estate. Harold considers the elder's secret suffering, realizing deeply the pain endured quietly over many years. Resolved, the elder pledges to compensate for lost moment, dedicating his prospects intentionally. Harold decides to safeguard the innocent child, making sure the boy's heart remains safe and untroubled. Traveling warily, the team keeps vigilance, riding together across the landscape to guarantee everybody's safety. Colette quietly observes her child sleeping peacefully, sensing comfort and a moment of composed at last. Troops discuss Harold's careful preparations, noting his calculated preparation and thoughtful approach for the journey. Harold directs that Clara and Colette be securely left in Blush Village without risk. He gives precise instructions about gold coins and the blade, making sure proper usage at once. Harold stresses practicality, telling them to buy a simple blade rather than unnecessary expensive options. Gently, Colette wakes, holding the food Harold readied, experiencing a small moment of quiet comfort. Approaching Blush Village, Colette takes a moment to appreciate the scenery, quietly enjoying the quiet surroundings. As sunlight emerges over the horizon, it marks a new beginning for all traveling allies.
Harold Stokes moved through the vast empty mansion hall, his mighty sorcery departing nothing visible. His parents admired his remarkable ability, oblivious to the risky repercussions of Harold's deeds. A subtle smirk emerged on Harold's confront, understanding that his parents couldn't truly comprehend dangers alone in his private room. Harold contemplated the result of his cautiously executed secret mission. Abruptly, Zen emerged, startling Harold, who quietly ordered him to close the door for privacy. Unexpectedly, Zen entered Harold's room, remembering the enigmatic incidents from the night of the complete moon. Harold grasped a spear firmly, cautioning Zen against speaking carelessly about sensitive and risky incidents. Realizing his position, Zen understood Harold wasn't expelling him, sensing relieved by the unexpected leniency. Harold quietly watched Zen, impressed by his considerate behavior regardless of differences in social and noble status. A soft smile crossed Zen's confront while Harold planned cautiously the most effective feasible plan. Harold offered Zen a chance to taste the peculiar crops he had cultivated diligently indoors. Watching cautiously, Zen analyzed Harold's growing methods, spotting inconsistent watering and sporadic attentiveness towards the plants. Harold disclosed that he had used a mighty life potion to accelerate the plant's growth. Cautiously, he measured precise water ratios, making sure each crop would survive properly. Without premature withering, Zen hesitated before tasting the raw produce. But Harold insisted, correcting his cautious hesitation. Zen sampled the crops Harold had nurtured, astonished by their unexpectedly rich sweetness and flavor. Harold sensed a sense of pride in his innovative life potion cultivation techniques and plan. He thought on the hardships faced by farmers nearby, resolved to improve their dire conditions. Harold instructed that the crops should be tested by other people and assessed for market viability. He reminded Zen to preserve secrecy, and Zen agreed, smiling confidently without any hesitation. Harold observed as Zen departed, understanding his companion's troublesome yet dedicated and earnest personality clearly. Pausing beyond, Zen wondered about Harold's severe focus and persistent dedication to his current duties. Practicing diligently, Harold refined his blade techniques in the courtyard, focusing on perfect accuracy. Each blow was executed under careful observation, making sure flawless technique and absolute command throughout practice. Harold contemplated his own abilities and potential, appreciating the power and ability he controlled thoroughly. Resolving to improve further, Harold aimed to match the sorcery and swordsmanship shown in initial stories. Understanding necessity, he recognized that fighting abilities were critical for surviving in this RPG-like world. Harold mentally ready to address the main hero's party, anticipating difficulties and potential conflicts along the method. Bracing himself for the trials onward, he accepted the dangers and difficulties awaiting him completely. Looking over the distant wilderness, Harold quietly committed to confronting the dangers and trials onward. Erica evaluated the Stokes household, reflecting on their responsibilities and the difficulties that awaited them all. She reassured her father about her duty, protecting the people as the Sumeragi household child. The spreading miasma threatened mountains and forests, causing illnesses and worsening the environmental circumstance significantly. Erica's father regretted sacrifices required to sustain the household's wealth, economy, and social position successfully. Regardless of her restrictions, Yuno decided to focus on accountability rather than worrying about her personal circumstance. Erica looked thoughtfully into the distance, wind flowing earlier period as she contemplated the burdens she bore. She decided to dedicate all her power and effort for the benefit of her people. Inside the estate, Harold Stokes scrutinized the financial papers cautiously while Kazuki watched quietly nearby. Every outline of the papers was checked meticulously by Harold, verifying no errors existed anywhere. With a small, assuring smile, Kazuki ensured Harold understood this meeting wasn't intended to threaten. The realization struck Harold that the Stokes household finances had worsened steadily over recent years. Extravagant spending by his parents emerged as the core issue, burdening residents and increasing debts. Harold Stokes listened attentively as Kazuki inquired whether he disagreed with the presented opinion clearly. Reluctantly, Harold admitted spotting the trend of rising emigration and the closure of farms. Urgency was emphasized by Kazuki, warning that financial mismanagement could cause the Stokes household collapse. Caution was Harold's approach as Kazuki imagined potential benefits arising from the household's financial ruin. Accountability for agricultural management was officially assigned by Harold to Jake, giving explicit instructions clearly. Confused by Zen's cheerful attitude, Harold Stokes frowned, unsure what the comment truly meant exactly. A basket of sweet potatoes flew abruptly towards Harold, startling him with wide, stunned eyes. Zen insisted Harold enjoy the handmade red Groot while Kazuki quietly watched, clearly entertained nearby. Recognition dawned on Harold as he recognized the sweet potatoes had been readied personally. Tasting one cautiously, Harold discovered unexpected sweetness, his eyes widening with amazement and delight at once. Proudly, Kazuki clarified the crop's unique growth using a proprietary technique while Harold stayed skeptical. Harold's assistance was requested by Kazuki to spread the cultivation technique with required specialized tools. Expenses and feasibility calculations occupied Harold's mind as he examined the basket quietly and thoughtfully. With caution, Harold agreed to assist if feasible, promising maximum effort and complete cooperation always. Kazuki cautioned of potential repercussions, clarifying that his father's anger could outcome in dungeon punishment. Kazuki stressed the natural response, emphasizing careful consideration while Zen laughed and watched with amusement nearby. Harold was cautioned by Kazuki to think cautiously and prevent causing unnecessary trouble or problems. The key was disclosed by Kazuki, who readied confidently to explain the innovative cultivation technique. Harold listened intently as Kazuki portrayed the LP cultivation technique, involving precise application of life potions. Sharing the system with local farmers was highlighted by Kazuki as minimizing financial dangers successfully. The LP cultivation technique's implementation emphasized by Kazuki combined multiple farms efficiently and focused on small-scale management. Expired life potions were demonstrated by Kazuki to show Harold how initial investments could be avoided. Rapid growth potential of the LP cultivation technique was clarified depending on potion quantity and crop type. Crops cultivated using this technique could bear fruit in only 5 to 7 days reliably. Kazuki thought warily, understanding the risk to his personal security if the LP technique became public. Harvest limits were emphasized by Kazuki to stop Harold's father from monopolizing the LP cultivation technique entirely. Economic flexibility was clarified as gradual challenging of other crops while keeping strict command initially. Astonished by the detailed plan, Harold apologized, while the elder Stokes found the plan admirable. Hana's feedback was demanded by Kazuki, refusing yes men, insisting all specific details be openly discussed. Respectfully, Harold nodded, agreeing to follow direction completely and acknowledging Kazuki's instructions without hesitation whatsoever. Harold's intelligence and ambition impressed the elder Stokes, showing careful preparation without selfishness or conceit. Always, compassion and dedication to the populace were identified by the elder Stokes, ignoring personal gain entirely. Jake was inquired by Kazuki to become Harold's arms and legs, providing complete assistance reliably. Power and effort were pledged by Jake solely for Harold-sama, making sure the security of all. At the Stokes estate, Harold informed youthful Harold that his marriage had been officially arranged. The alliance between the two families promised strengthened lineage. Startling Harold with unknown marriage news, Harold mentioned the need for audiences in Sumeragi domain, unsettling him about his fiancé. Discovering Sumeragi household's reluctance to assistance monarchy increased the Stokes household's social standing prestige. Regardless of agreeing to assistance finances, the Sumeragi child belonged to a noble household dismissive of other people. Harold Stokes noticed the Sumeragi domain's damaging miasma, complicating the forthcoming engagement conversations significantly. Composed reflection allowed him to think deliberately and plan cautiously for approaching potential difficulties. Researching herbs in texts, Harold observed anise, hyssop, gat fane and fang, and real weed cautiously recorded. Cross-referencing every outline ensured Harold retained all required details to safeguard both household and interests. Considering Tasuku Sumeragi's wisdom, Harold identified careful, subtle deeds were essential to prevent death flags. Harold Stokes contemplated gaining Tasuku Sumeragi as ally, increasing freedom and assistance for other individuals. Each choice required evaluating potential repercussions, as deviations could unexpectedly change events in the story. Working diligently on cultivation research, Harold guided helpers while keeping focus through daily interruptions steadily. Turmoil arose when assistants misbehaved, but Harold continued quietly, persevering with duties without losing patience. Meticulously revising plans, Harold left detailed notes reflecting his careful preparation and calculated preparation process. Considering Tasuku Sumeragi's assistance, Harold found it safer to act and assist main hero allies. Cautiously, he decided that acquiring Tasuku as ally outweighed potential dangers, regardless of unforeseen repercussions possibly arising. Harold continued his cultivation methods diligently, making sure focus persisted regardless of interruptions from Liner and other helpers. Even amid disruptions, Harold quietly handled turmoil, keeping productivity and duties throughout the estate's demanding surroundings. Arriving at Sumeragi Estate, Harold noticed Erika, cautious of her demeanor yet understanding her formidable arrival. Harold evaluated the effects if Erika gained judgment and kindness while agreeing to her engagement cautiously. Reflection led him to understand Erika's importance as healer within the main hero party's critical operations. Avoiding all death flags alone wouldn't suffice, and ultimate damage could occur without careful preparation. He weighed his conscience cautiously, realizing he must earn Erika's positive impression from their very first meeting. Tasuku Sumeragi introduced himself and household officially, presenting both Erika and his wife Koyomi to Harold. Introducing himself respectfully, Harold aimed to make a strong, favorable impression during his initial meeting. Erika responded politely, her composed demeanor displaying kindness and careful focus during this first crucial interaction. Watching her lifeless eyes, Harold contemplated methods to successfully communicate and connect meaningfully with Erika personally. The Sumeragi household suggested departing Harold and Erika alone, giving opportunity for confidence and feelings to grow. Harold seized this chance and Erica agreed to advisor him through the estate, creating opportunity. Erica led Harold through various estate areas, demonstrating him directions while keeping proper formal and respectful decorum. Harold expressed that having Erica as escort was an honor, bracing himself for inevitable difficulties onward. Harold Stokes neared the ancient cherry blossom tree, sensing something important awaiting him. Erica Sumeragi remained standing under the tree, quietly introducing herself as Tasuku Sumeragi's child. Harold responded, verifying his name and acknowledging the significance of this meeting. Erica clarified the cherry blossom tree symbolized the Sumeragi household for over 5 centuries. Harold watched, realizing this cherry blossom differed from what he previously knew about its meaning. Harold Stokes clarified the resemblance to a person else, demonstrating little worry for the Sumeragi household. Erica Sumeragi asked Harold, spotting his unusual reaction to her household's prestige and name. Harold internally observed a misunderstanding, realizing Erica could misinterpret his motives entirely. He clarified that his Stokes household was equally prominent, startling Erica and challenging her assumptions. Harold worried his remarks could derail his initial goal. Departing Erica visibly upset and confused, Harold Stokes handed Erica an envelope, instructing her to deliver it to her father. Erica refused, remaining firm while Harold cautioned her about repercussions for inaction. Harold suggested the envelope could contain a method to rescue her suffering people. Erica evaluated the chance as Harold hinted she had nothing to lose. The two at last exchanged the envelope under the cherry blossom tree, a silent understanding forming. Erica accepted the envelope warily, uncertain whether she could completely confidence Harold Stokes. Harold returned home and at once began wondering his staff about LP cultivation technique progress. He confirmed usable fields and trial schedules, instructing his staff to continue listening to Jake. Harold thought on Norman's competence and the smooth progress of their plans behind the scenes. He concluded that Erica, caring for her people, would probably deliver the message to Tasuku. Harold portrayed the antibiotics compound and miasma range, noting it wouldn't completely solve the problem. He evaluated approaching Tasuku through other means if the message failed to convince him. Erica successfully took the message, achieving Harold's immediate goal and making sure the plan could progress. A few days later, Harold rigorously trained other people, pushing them to improve their swordsmanship abilities. He insisted on strict preparation, warning them that mistakes or lack of readiness would have repercussions. Harold struggled with fighting practice, realizing most opponents lacked the power to test him. A visitor reached it unexpectedly, causing Harold to question who could have come to see him. Harold's surprise grew as he identified the visitor, Erica Sumeragi, standing before him seriously. Harold stiffened instantly as Erica emerged unexpectedly, worried she could disrupt his LP cultivation trials. He asked why she came personally instead of sending a messenger, thinking about her genuine goal. Quietly sipping tea, Erica's expression stayed unreadable, departing Harold uncertain about her motives entirely. Accepting a courteous gesture, she maintained politeness while cautiously keeping distance from Harold consistently. Approaching warily, Harold asked her arrival, while Erica stayed composed, departing him unsure how to respond. Confronting Erica, Harold became annoyed, insisting she should feel thankful for his reluctant focus at once. Gesturing with impatience, he demanded she explain the reason for her sudden, unexpected visit promptly. Bowing respectfully, Erica expressed sincere gratitude on behalf of the Sumeragi household for Harold's efforts. Harold recognized Tasuku's antibiotics worked successfully, understanding the household had been saved rapidly through intervention. Clarifying the medicine as temporary, he cautioned Erica about feasible side effects, departing her contemplative. Reflecting quietly, Erica recognized Harold worked beyond obligation, getting ready medicine faster than anticipated in advance. She wondered how Harold produced medicine so swiftly, regardless of the thorough investigation by Sumeragi authorities. Demanding a reason for her visit, Harold prompted Erica to present a message from her father. The message clarified Erica followed Harold's instructions exactly, clarifying the Sumeragi household's motives thoroughly. Officials officially expressed gratitude, acknowledging Harold's assistance and significant impact on their people successfully. Reviewing patient progress, Harold observed no immediate side effects from the medicine administered cautiously. He examined the report cautiously, considering whether additional unforeseen details could seem within the papers. A postscript disclosed Sumeragi domain troubles, along with a personal request for Harold's immediate assistance. Harold learned he needed to protection temporarily for Erica and the Stokes estate cautiously. Erica showed worry, realizing housing together while engaged could cause unexpected complications during their stay. Erica admitted reliance on Harold's generosity following the coach returned, demonstrating vulnerability sincerely and openly. Harold scolded Erika for treating him as if her fiancé was somehow insignificant or unimportant. He refused further requests, clarifying generosity had already been completely stretched beyond reasonable and adequate limits. Acknowledging Harold's stance, Erika decided not to ask more and rapidly left the immediate site. Sitting alone, Harold contemplated the circumstance and sensed growing anxiety about complications that could unfold soon. Harold noticed the Stokes household coach approaching, sensing the uncomfortable premonition that had troubled him. Quietly, he pondered the circumstance, getting ready for feasible incidents and complications that might arise immediately. A warning from Tasuku announced Erika would be staying temporarily at Harold's residence without delay. Harold confirmed he must pick her up, expressing reluctance to live together temporarily with Erika. Realizing his uncomfortable sensing was correct, Harold thought on potential complications her arrival could cause. Harold recognized Erika had planned from the beginning to stay, wondering her motives cautiously and thoroughly. He thought on the message he had written. Understanding it triggered the sequence of incidents. Erika and her companion reached it at the gates, startling Harold with their precisely timed condition unexpectedly. Erika expressed honor being picked up by Harold himself, though he doubted her sincerity internally. Harold noticed Yuno, Erika's attendant, introduced to assist her during her stay, adding an arrival watching Yuno with Erika. Harold recognized another complication from the Sumeragi household had reached it unexpectedly today. He decided to prevent interference, allowing Erika and Yuno to accomplish themselves independently without his intervention. Harold cautioned them both not to interfere, making sure they clearly understood his limits and demands clearly. Hayden publicly introduced Erika and Yuno, drawing focus and excitement from everybody watching the setting rapidly. Harold reacted angrily to Hayden's announcement, worried about the public spectacle and potential embarrassment occurring abruptly. Harold was stunned when informed he must escort Erika on a town tour at once tomorrow. Erika politely inquired Harold to protection for her, compelling him to become involved from beginning.
At the Sumeragi estate, a message from Harold reached the household, raising quiet curiosity. Kiryu cautiously handed the message to an elder, causing him to examine its contents with caution. The elder, frowning, voiced doubt about Harold's motives, noting the unusual openness of the message. He recognized that the Stokes household had nothing to gain, yet the message carried potential risk. Harold's message suggested the Stokes household could confront decline, departing everyone tense and watchful. The elder evaluated that Harold could only be a messenger, suspecting another could be controlling him. He examined the message, reasoning that the author could intend to harm the Stokes household rather than assist Sumeragi. It was feasible the sender was a person close to Harold, independently manipulating him for their own ends. From a critical point of view, Harold emerged hypnotized and evaluated Sumeragi's reaction and loyalty. The elder worried that the risk could outweigh any benefit, considering how to stop the potential scheme. The elder identified that the contents of Harold's message could be genuine, indicating real danger. He instructed Kiryu to prepare required supplies for those willing to act regardless of the dangers. Kiryu recognized the order, making sure the preparations were understood and prepared for immediate use. Meanwhile, at the Stokes estate, a lavish meal was served, showcasing the household's wealth and pride. Erika and Yuno joined other people at the table, unaware of the looming threat hinted by Harold's message. Harold emerged uncomfortable during the meal, but tried to hide his worry from Erika. Yuno and other people noticed Harold's reaction, while some guests observed the subtle strain at the table. His parents laughed awkwardly, attempting to ease the circumstance. Though the atmosphere stayed slightly strained, Harold sensed annoyed seeing his household act in public, aware of how exposed he was. He recognized everybody seemed absorbed in their own world, intensifying his desire to leave as soon as feasible. Yuno thought on Harold's earlier period behavior, noting his rebellious nature and unpredictability. She evaluated that Harold could be linked to a traitor or manipulated, adding uncertainty. Yuno decided that clarifying Harold's motives was crucial, as the threat to Sumeragi stayed unresolved. Erika affirmed her goal in assisting the investigation, prepared to act on Yuno's instructions. Yuno expressed worry for Erika's security, while Erika reassured her, assured in her investigative abilities. Erika watched the empty room, considering the potential risks surrounding Harold. Yuno suspected Harold could be acting under a traitor's control, causing further caution. She recalled that Erika had attempted to evaluate Harold previously, yielding no conclusive results. Yuno evaluated the chance that Harold could be manipulated like a puppet, unaware of it. The chance of Harold being hypnotized or regulated without his consent weighed heavily on her mind. Erika asked the chance of Harold being regulated. Evaluating the nature of Tazuku-sama's claim, she readied herself for decision, aware the effort required would be considerable and delicate.
Kazuki clarified how nobles treated commoners like items, warning that any defiance would lead to ridicule. Arika and Yuno discussed the heavy taxes that force residents into a frugal life. Wrestling to survive, Harold observed that revolts were futile as the Stokes domain prioritized military funding over citizen well-being. Clara listened cautiously while a townsperson clarified the circumstance, understanding the limited scope of the narrative. Hayden reported concerns about Harold's son, indicating that household issues added another layer of strain in the kingdom. Harold whispered something urgent to Clara, departing her stunned and speechless. Clara evaluated the rumors about the Stokes household's son, realizing it could be genuine. They hurried through the streets, doors slamming behind them as strain rose. Darkness moved along the alley, pointing at a person secretly tracking them. Kazuki and Yuno reached it at the shop Norman mentioned. Curious if this was the location, Harold reached it at the Stokes domain, greeted by a local who offered a suspicious welcome. Clara received a small envelope of money, sensing uncomfortable yet grateful for the gesture. Kazuki observed Clara's cautious behavior, realizing she ignored rumors to confirm the truth herself. Harold thought on reports from troops and the potential risk to Clara and Colette, considering precautions. Clara walked alone, thinking quietly about the town's growth and the subtle threats surrounding her. Harold reviewed reports, verifying that all 6 estates were growing as anticipated, preparation to expand operations. His advisors cautioned that expanding without enough manpower could risk mismanagement by self-interested farmers. Harold evaluated hiring beyond workers, wondering if his current staff could accomplish the farms alongside their duties. A subordinate requested to finish his soil report first, clarifying which fields needed focus. The report confirmed no negative effects from life potions, detailing rotation schedules for different crops. Harold instructed his group to continue monitoring crop samples, noting that taste had not shown differences yet. Clara sat quietly, reflecting on the results of the harvest and the subtle progress of the estates. Yuno emerged unexpectedly, startling Clara, who at once noticed her arrival. Clara recounted residents' his hatred towards the Stokes household, realizing the resentment was more widespread than anticipated. Yuno responded lightly, noting curiosity and intrigue in the stories, assessing which matters were worth further focus. Yuno disclosed shocking news that Harold had used sorcery to burn a servant and her household. Clara struggled to believe it, wondering whether the narrative about Clara and Colette was genuine. Yuno confirmed multiple servants gave the same testimony, suggesting the rumor was not unfounded. Regardless of this, Harold had found optimism to rescue Sumeraji's people, demonstrating a different side. Clara thought that perhaps Harold had been shaped differently from his parents, pointing at feasible transform. Clara cautioned Erika to prevent being alone with Harold, worried about something could happen. Erika reassured Yuno, demonstrating assistance and soothing her fears regardless of the strained situation. Erika comforted Yuno again, emphasizing that everything would be well and she was there. Harold, from a distance, confidently declared that it would be well, echoing reassurance to everybody. Sumeraji's child remained standing by the window, watching the wind sway the curtains. Servants whispered about her fragile condition since meeting Harold, their worry growing each passing day. Meanwhile, Harold trained in the woods, practicing with his blade. The site was quiet, perfect for honing his abilities without interruption. He swung his blade independently, challenging power and accuracy. The air around him seemed to hum with power as he focused entirely on his training. The blade glowed, sparks flying as he pushed his limits. Harold's concentration intensified, channeling his strength through each blow. At last, he unleashed a mighty technique, swift lightning sending a surge of power crashing down, showing mastery over his blade and sorcery alike. Harold unleashed swift lightning again, causing massive explosions throughout the woods. Trees shattered, and the ground trembled under the force of his sorcery-infused blade. He paused, analyzing his technique. Though mighty, Harold sensed the assault still lacked the power needed to match the initial game's Harold. Resolved, he pushed himself further, imagining greater accuracy and speed. He knew his abilities must exceed the standard to survive in this world. Unseen, a youthful woman watched from behind a tree, impressed yet worried. She observed Harold's combination of swordsmanship and sorcery, sensing a hidden secret. She pondered the risk he posed, realizing the only method to understand his potential was to address him directly. Regardless of the risk, the girl evaluated retreat, evaluating the risk of confronting Harold directly. She knew his strength could overwhelm her, and her hidden weapons offered little assurance. Abruptly, a blade flew towards her. She froze, startled, realizing Harold had detected her arrival regardless of her attempts to hide. She debated running, but knew Harold had probably already anticipated her deeds. His ability at 10 years old made evasion nearly impossible. Confronting the plunged blade, she admitted to herself she could not lie her method out of the circumstance. The reality of his precision was undeniable. Harold, flustered, accidentally let the blade slip from his hands, creating a strained moment. Both recognized the meeting could go in any direction. Harold surveyed the woods, astonished that no enemies emerged. He wondered if his criticizes had incapacitated secret observers, or if they stayed silent, too cautious to move. Yuno emerged, bowing slightly and expressing regret for spying on Harold. She admitted her curiosity had drawn her here, regardless of the risk. Harold observed that she seemed unharmed and quietly watched her stance. He found no real threat from watching a youthful girl but stayed cautious. He cautioned Yuno to stay visible while watching, clarifying the risk of being secret near his practice. She acknowledged the advice, understanding its seriousness. Yuno thought on his remarks, realizing Harold's warning implied there would be no tolerance for further intrusion. She accepted the limit, understanding his immense ability and authority. Yuno thought on Harold's unmatched capacity, noting how easily he had sensed her arrival and decided the circumstance without harm. She worried about protecting Erika from someone so powerful. Harold remained standing firm, exuding both strength and ingenuity. His arrival alone reminded observers that he was no typical child. Yuno recognized that confronting him directly was impossible for a mere puppet. His abilities left her sensing defeated before any conflict. Harold noticed Erika's discomfort in the new surroundings. He casually asked Yuno, learning that the sheltered girl was wrestling with homesickness. Yuno reminded him of Erika's status and encouraged him to show some kindness, but Harold retorted with cold humor, emphasizing their temporary relationship and his refusal to be restrained. Harold recognized he had spoken too independently. Worrying that Yuno could misinterpret his motives, he cautiously considered his next words. He thought on the engagement. Choosing there was no reason to reveal his thinking about canceling it yet. He asserted that no reasoning was required. Harold watched Erika, noting that her prolonged ill state was unusual. He wondered if her constitution was weaker than he had anticipated. From above, Erika gazed out of her window. Silent and contemplative, she seemed troubled, departing Harold to question whether this circumstance could signal an impending flag in their fate. Harold recognized he had left his blade in the woods and rushed beyond, worried about retrieving it before nightfall. He spotted Erika at a distance and thought it was unsafe to leave a lethal weapon unattended. He decided to hurry towards the woods. Erika emerged fragile, and Harold watched her cautiously, wondering if she was strong enough to step around safely. He evaluated guiding her back to her room to stop her from collapsing. Approaching warily, Harold scolded Erika for wandering regardless of her poor health, insisting she return securely to her home. Harold called out to Erika, urging her to respond, annoyed by her silence in the garden. He recognized she could not speak openly when a person she disliked was present, and departing could be the only way to let her settle. Harold pretended indifference, claiming he didn't protection if her health worsened, while Erika quietly grabbed his sleeve. She inquired something important, and Harold waited, curious about her question, aware the moment mattered. Erika confronted Harold, inquiring if the rumor of him using sorcery to burn a servant was genuine. Harold evaluated Erika's question, realizing the truth was obvious and ready to answer honestly. He at once denied the rumor, but Erika's expression showed she wasn't completely convinced. Harold disclosed he had indeed killed the servant and her child, clarifying it wouldn't importance if they weren't remembered in a heroic tale. Erika inquired why he would act that method, and Harold casually clarified there was no special reason, treating them like livestock. He insisted it was an act of leniency, claiming the child was spared loneliness, while Erika pleaded for him to stop. Erika swung her arm angrily at Harold, expressing her outrage at his cruel remarks. She yelled that he was the worst human she had ever met, tears streaming down her confront. Harold responded coldly, claiming he had nothing more to say, while Erika's anger and pain stayed. He walked away quietly. His expression conflicted as he touched his confront, reflecting on her remarks. A servant boy called out to Harold from the hallway, breaking the strain and drawing him towards the following task. Zen reached it at Harold's room, casually inquiring if he had been practiced. Unaware of Harold's mood, Harold, upset, demanded to be left alone for the entire day, his voice filled with irritation. He forcefully pushed Zen out of the room, refusing to hear any objections, closing the door firmly. Zen knelt on the floor beyond, calling Harold's name, worried and astonished by the sudden dismissal. Harold sighed while sitting alone against the closed door, reflecting quietly, conflicted about his feelings and deeds. Harold thought on his deeds, realizing that even his tries to drive Erika away still caused her pain. He told himself not to feel shaken, attempting to preserve calmness regardless of the emotional burden of her reactions. Looking out the window, Harold worried that if he didn't accept decision, he wouldn't be able to step ahead, sensing trapped by the consequences of his own behavior. Harold Stokes woke abruptly, sunlight pouring across the floor, the clock showing he had completely overslept this morning, missing several hours. Sitting upright in bed, he recognized the previous day's harsh slap had truly affected him. departing the room unusually quiet. Reflecting on yesterday's incidents, Harold sensed embarrassed but surprisingly not defeated, considering how fans of the game would judge his deeds. A sudden rumble reminded him to leave rapidly, causing Harold to get dressed and head towards the dining room for breakfast. Entering the dining room, he noticed a servant remaining patiently, watching Harold's exhaustion, remarking quietly about the day's demanding schedule onward. Discussing the LP cultivation technique with his advisor, Harold emphasized the importance of recruiting external personnel to expand the cultivation operations successfully. The older advisor asked Harold's approach, inquiring whether he had thought cautiously about increasing workforce efficiency and implementing the expansion strategies properly. Harold suggested showing the LP cultivation technique to local merchants, proposing contracts allowing them to use the rights for profitable returns. He clarified the system clearly. Merchants pay fees for access, while profits would be divided fairly between the farmers and inventor. Harold emphasized the necessity for capable inspectors overseeing farmers, asking for the advisor's opinion on which companies could accomplish the process reliably. Contacting separate merchants seemed difficult, the advisor observed, while Harold evaluated the limited connections could stop reaching the trustworthy merchants efficiently. Reflecting, Harold thought of his parents' potential connections, realizing they could offer a pathway to reach reliable merchants successfully in the area. Harold proposed focusing on this plan, suggesting coordination with Jake to guarantee both parties executed the merchant recruitment plan efficiently and successfully. Abruptly, a knock sounded on the door, calling Harold's name urgently, attempting to get his immediate focus as rapidly as feasible. The door opened, showing no one. The visitor noticed Harold's absence, departing the room entirely empty, echoing silence throughout the spacious hall. Walking down the hall, a person noticed Harold missing and wondered whether he had gone to train again regardless of getting up early. The visitor saw Erica seated quietly, greeted her politely, noting her composed demeanor regardless of the apparent strain in the room. Erica clarified Yuno was out handling personal business, while Zen introduced himself officially, inquiring politely about her current visit to the manor. Zen inquired whether Erica had business with Harold, and she clarified he was absent from his room, so she had waited patiently. Watching Harold's workload, Zen noticed he had been busy constantly recently, worrying he could overexert himself, worried about Harold's overall well-being. Erica confronted Zen, inquiring whether he knew about Harold allegedly using sorcery to kill one of the servants in the mansion previously. Zen admitted he had heard some rumors but could not confirm their truth, hesitating before accepting them as fact entirely. Erica insisted the servant's death was genuine, claiming Harold had confirmed the rumors personally, which caused Zen to react nervously, unsettled. Wrestling with her emotions, Erica asked how she could continue tracking Harold regardless of aware about his darker actions and moral compromises. She confessed she could not completely accept Harold departing. Zen astonished and uncertain how to respond to her sudden declaration. Wrestling with her emotions, Erica evaluated how she could forgive Harold following. He had killed a servant, wrestling with her conscience deeply. Reflecting on her position as Harold's fiancé, she recognized her accountability to assist the Sumeraji household, sensing conflicted about her duties. With tears streaming down her confront, Erica admitted she could not forgive Harold, showing the emotional burden she carried to Zen clearly. Expressing regret for her display of emotions, she quietly excused herself, departing the room and attempting to compose herself following the overwhelming meeting. Watching Erica leave, Zen thought on her emotions, thinking about whether it was truly manageable. Understanding her pain mirrored the complexity of Harold's circumstance. Standing apart, Harold and Erica each carried heavy burdens, while Harold saved a woman and child yet bore dishonor for being a murderer. They debated internally whether continuing on separate paths was appropriate, sensing conflicted while understanding how comparable they were regardless of traveling different ways. Zen watched the circumstance closely, worried that departing things unresolved could cause ongoing strain, sensing a complex emotional strain between the two. The narration thought on their shared qualities, power and kindness, suggested that mutual assistance could assist them walk together successfully through difficulties. Zen called out to Erica, inquiring whether she would accompany him, and she responded positively, indicating she was willing to accept a hopeful step. Expressing regret to Harold, Zen admitted he feared Harold could one day shatter completely, regretting that he had not worked sooner to stop harm. Considering the repercussions, Zen recognized ignoring problems or turning a blind eye could outcome in Harold being lost in a disastrous circumstance. Eventually, resolving to act, Zen resolved he could never forgive himself for neglecting to rescue Harold previously, committing to intervene actively whenever feasible. He declared that even if evaluated inept or forsaken, he would assist Harold in any feasible manner, dedicating himself completely to the cause. Confronting Erica, Zen insisted she hear cautiously, emphasizing Harold's well-being and decisions mattered greatly, demanding her focus to guarantee proper understanding and assistance. Erika quietly agreed to follow Zen, inquiring him where they would proceed following, prepared to step forward despite uncertainty about the destination. Guiding her gently, Zen led Erika ahead, taking her to a location she did not yet comprehend or understand the complete significance of. Erika hesitated momentarily, wondering the sudden direction, but Zen insisted they continue at once, departing no opportunity to linger or reconsider the path. Showing the location, Zen brought her to Harold's room, making sure Erika understood precisely where they were headed and the importance of the destination. Erika's eyes widened, stunned at the revelation, realizing the complete significance of arriving at Harold's room and the implications for him. Carrying a tray cautiously through the wide hallway, Harold smiled brightly while Zen watched warily, and a servant quietly followed behind. Without warning, Zen slammed the door closed, causing Harold to flinch in surprise. The strain in the room at once escalated sharply. Sweating nervously, Harold tried to explain his deeds, but Zen's glaring expression made it clear he stayed unimpressed and grave. Expressing regret quietly for peeking, Harold admitted his confused as Zen scolded him harshly, emphasizing boundaries and respecting privacy within the house. In the corner, another guest paused hesitantly, realizing escape was impossible while Harold attempted to rapidly analyze Zen's unpredictable behavior warily. Harold neared Zen urgently, clarifying troubling rumors spreading throughout town regarding Clara, worried about inaction could negatively impact his own reputation and status. Remaining composed, Zen listened closely, quietly considering Harold's concerns while analyzing the potential repercussions if Harold failed to act responsibly or promptly. With an indifferent expression, Zen dismissed Harold's anxious concerns, departing him startled, unsettled, and realizing his worries could have been overestimated completely. Considering showing the truth about Clara and Colette's escape, Harold hesitated while Zen evaluated whether disclosing these details was truly required cautiously. Clara stayed completely silent, resolved and resolute, refusing to reveal any confidential secrets, even if it meant risking her personal security entirely. Harold inquired about informing Erika, but Zen confidently dismissed the notion, emphasizing that sharing the details would serve absolutely no goal whatsoever. Zen highlighted that the rumors deeply affected Clara, and Harold slowly recognized how grave and potentially harmful the circumstance had actually become. Wondering Zen's firm refusal, Harold pondered the reasoning, while Clara internally recognized this decision prevented a risky death flag from occurring unexpectedly. Acknowledging Zen's kindness, Harold worried that blindly tracking these instructions could inadvertently create grave problems or lead to significant personal downfall unexpectedly. Watching Clara crying, Zen began preparation how to warn Harold not to disclose any sensitive details and preserve complete confidentiality properly. Clarifying the risk, Zen told Harold that informing Erika about Clara's staying alive would generate doubt, potentially creating a risky death flag at once. Noting Clara's overly kind and gentle nature, Zen cautioned that her sympathetic tendencies could unintentionally cause harm if she stayed in close proximity. Harold understood Zen's motives were to safeguard both Clara and himself, preventing unnecessary complications that could arise from her well-meaning but harmful deeds. Clarifying matters, Zen assured Harold that he had no purpose of marrying Erika, treating the engagement purely as a transactional and practical arrangement. Reflecting on historical economic crises, Harold observed how the Stokes household cautiously planned and executed calculated decisions, supporting the continent through difficult times successfully. Inquiring whether breaking the engagement could harm the Sumeragi household, Harold listened as Zen clarified that required measures had already been thoughtfully implemented. Zen mentioned sending a cautiously worded message through Erika to Tasuku, detailing precautions and prospects plans to safeguard both families and residents efficiently. Within the message, Zen provided methods to counter the miasma, allowing the Sumeragi woods industry to recover securely and continue operating successfully later. Spotting the message lacked detailed instructions, Harold asked Zen, who clarified the vagueness was deliberate to prevent misunderstandings, while protecting critical information effectively. Verifying contingency plans, Zen ensured that the Sumeragi household could survive even if the engagement was broken, departing Harold astonished by the thoughtful foresight. Harold, astonished by Zen's meticulous preparation, inquired about the thoroughness, curious how the antibody and message were ready to cover potential emergencies carefully. Zen urged Harold to consider his own uncertain prospects, encouraging him to think onward, prepare for potential disasters, and act responsibly without delay. Clarifying the feasible economic slump, Zen informed Harold that the Stokes household could confront financial difficulties, requiring careful planning to avoid disastrous outcomes later. Emphasizing careful management of taxation and spending, Zen suggested that hardships could be delayed successfully if they handled current responsibilities with maximum prudence and diligence. Assuring Harold, Zen mentioned Tasuku Sumeragi would act to stop significant damage, keeping stability regardless of forthcoming difficulties and unforeseen difficulties affecting the family strategically. Clara hesitated uncertainly, wrestling with how to respond, while Harold looked confused and waited patiently for her reaction, unsure of what decision to accept. Clarifying Tasuku's position, Zen disclosed he would act as a liaison with the royal household, protecting residents if the Stokes household suffered collapse. Zen cautioned Harold that if any details leaked, it could outcome in severe repercussions, departing Harold sensing nervous and uncertain about handling this situation. Promising complete discretion, Harold reassured Clara that he would keep the secret, keeping confidentiality and preventing any unintended dissemination of sensitive details entirely. Entertained, Zen instructed Harold to leave promptly, emphasizing that no further discussion was required and all relevant matters had already been sufficiently covered efficiently. Inquiring about Harold's plans, Zen inquired why blade practice abruptly became a priority, curious about the reasoning behind this unexpected transform in schedule. Harold admitted his interest in swordsmanship, expressing his desire to witness Zen showing his abilities, hoping to improve understanding of blade techniques firsthand. Getting ready a swinging practice setup, Zen focused on improving swift lightning's accuracy while Harold watched closely, learning and analyzing movement patterns to enhance his ability. Taking two swords, Harold demonstrated a special privilege, regardless of having no prior training, startling Zen with his enthusiasm and willingness to participate actively in practice. Zen instructed Harold to continue moving constantly, emphasizing the importance of staying alive over precise technique, showing the necessity of staying alert and avoiding risk consistently. Panicked, Harold pleaded for Zen to ease his practice intensity, worried about for his security while being unexpectedly used as a target during practice exercises. Clara walked quietly down the hallway, her expression solemn, moving cautiously through the space, reflecting on recent incidents and the decisions she had made thoughtfully. Contemplating whether to reveal the truth about Clara and Colette, she hesitated, unsure if making this details public would be wise or potentially harmful. Erika returned unexpectedly, relieved to see Yuno, her expression combining joy and urgency as she rushed ahead to guarantee everything was safe and accounted for. Resolved, Clara insisted she needed immediate confirmation. Her resolve clear as she neared Yuno with urgency, eager to clarify critical details without delay.
Harold weighed the repercussions of showing Clara and Colette staying alive, aware parental discovery could cause grave suspicion, while prioritizing the Sumeragi family's independence and safety. Watching from afar, he confirmed the children's practice stayed uninterrupted, the village quiet, and the dangers from earlier period threats entirely unnoticed by them. Clara and Colette cautiously examined records regarding an unusual antibiotic source. Understanding its origin clarified medical irregularities that had happened previously within their village. Collaborating with other researchers proved insufficient. They could not produce clinical samples in moment, realizing that successfully creating the solution demanded much additional preparation. Predicting prospects' crises, Harold foresaw the Sumeragi household's difficulties, cautiously preparation engagement decisions to ensure their ongoing survival and maintain stability throughout the village region. Working tirelessly, Harold dedicated countless hours developing medicine for the Sumeragi household, completely without personal benefit, committing completely to the challenging and exhausting project onward. Sensing irregularities in the surroundings, Colette noticed Harold's arrival seemed nearly omniscient, requiring her to observe warily and remain constantly aware of potential secret threats. Clara asked whether Harold's behavior towards Erika could have been intentional, analyzing his motives and considering every feasible plan behind his complex decision-making. Contemplating Harold's unpredictability, Colette recognized his intimidating nature made him difficult to understand, and the more she evaluated, the more perplexing he emerged to become. Weeks following conflict, Harold quietly reviewed detailed notes, keeping calmness, thoughtful consideration, and preparedness, ensuring he would remain ready for any potential complications or challenges. Over a moment, Harold watched the passage of days while Clara and Colette stayed away, focusing diligently on business while verifying their ongoing security. Norman neared Harold and initiated discussion regarding urgent matters requiring immediate focus, as Harold welcomed him with composed readiness, ready to handle any circumstance. Summoned by their master, Harold received critical instructions from Norman, completely aware that the meeting could significantly control decisions and require careful focus throughout discussions. The master outlined Lady Erika's declining health, emphasizing the urgency of her return to Sumeragi domain, causing Harold to cautiously consider the implications of this directive. Accepting the accountability, Harold agreed to escort Lady Erika securely, making sure her protection during transit while keeping calmness, focus, and readiness throughout the journey ahead. Harold experienced astonishment when unexpectedly instructed to remain at the Sumeragi residence, tasked with improving familial relationships, departing him uncomfortable and uncertain about his following deeds. Wandering the requirement to demonstrate sincerity with Lady Erica, Harold recognized that the circumstance involved delicate interpersonal nuances and required careful navigation to prevent misunderstandings or offense. Although wishing to prevent Erica entirely, Harold identified the importance of completing the task and approaching it cautiously to stop potential dangers or complications. Considering his proposal regarding the LP cultivation technique, Harold identified it as an opportunity to advance his plan while simultaneously fulfilling obligations towards others. Evaluating the Sumeragi household circumstances, Harold recognized progress seemed uncertain, but he understood that his deeds could significantly control the household's future and stability over time. Formulating a plan to gain Tasuku as an ally, Harold relied on careful plan assured his most effective approach had already been deployed successfully. Keeping self-assurance, Harold thought on the naivety of other people while making sure his careful preparation preserved control, allowing him to navigate complex circumstances strategically and effectively. Watching the countryside, Harold readied mentally for forthcoming interactions, anticipating difficulties and preparation carefully to navigate the complexities surrounding the Sumeragi family and their village relations. Arriving in Bloche village, Harold neared a local resident to gather details, showing focus, resolve, and intent to locate the individuals he sought successfully. A villager informed Harold about Clara Ameller's whereabouts, providing the critical details he needed to continue his mission while making sure her security during subsequent deeds.
Harold Stokes carried the laundry basket through the quiet field surrounding his home. The sun shone and a gentle breeze rustled the grass. He hung the clothes cautiously on the line, making sure each piece was secure. The routine sensed quiet and grounding for Harold. Harold paused, taking in the scenery. The mountains stretched far into the horizon and the breeze cooled his confront, reminding him of freedom. 5 months had passed since the incidents that changed his life. He thought quietly on how surreal everything still sensed. Harold recalled the day he had nearly been executed by the feudal lord. Surviving sensed like a second chance, and he decided to live completely. Harold remembered the boy who had helped him survive. He recognized the boy was only a year younger than his child. Clara remained standing quietly, reflecting on the boy's life. She wondered what had happened to him since the last meeting. Harold knew he could no longer intervene with the Stokes household. Clara worried about their well-being without showing herself. Clara greeted Leona, who emerged with a cheerful demeanor. The morning sunlight highlighted the calmness of the day. Leona clarified that Liner had gone to the ranch with Colette to obtain milk. Clara nodded, relieved everything was well. Clara observed Liner carry the milk back from the ranch. She reassured herself that the boy's practice would benefit him. Liner and Clara exchanged remarks about keeping discipline and protection. Clara sensed the boy's progress was steady and promising. Alone, Clara thought of getting ready the cookies she had baked yesterday, anticipating the return of Liner and Colette. Abruptly, a cloaked stranger emerged and called out, identifying Clara Ameller. She was astonished and wary of the unexpected visitor. The stranger asked Clara directly about Harold Stokes. Clara's heart raced as she evaluated how much to reveal, cautious of repercussions. The cloaked stranger pressed Clara about the rumors of a boy's murder in Stokes' domain. Clara was stunned. She asked who the stranger could be. Doubts swirled about whether he was connected to the Stokes household. Clara insisted she knew nothing. The stranger bowed slightly and promised to return, departing Clara uncomfortable and thoughtful. Harold's security weighed on her mind. She feared that if the feudal lord became suspicious, risk could reach him. Clara quietly prayed for Harold's protection, hoping divine intervention would keep him safe from enemies and misfortune. Clara quietly prayed, inquiring for Harold's protection. She hoped divine direction would keep him safe from risk. Harold reached it at the welcoming estate. Erica and Yuno greeted him warmly, easing the strain of travel. The adults offered Harold a rest and promised to escort him to his room later. He nodded quietly. Harold confronted Tasuku directly, insisting he had something important to say. Tasuku smiled, unbothered by Harold's tone. Regardless of his irritation, Harold scheduled a private meeting. He readied himself for the conversation. Aware it could anger Tasuku, Harold noticed Tasuku stayed composed just as he had in the initial narrative. The boy's calmness surprised him. Yuno neared Tasuku. Seeking direction, he greeted her politely, curious about her motives and arrival. Yuno handed Tasuku a report detailing the circumstance in Stokes' domain and Harold's current state. Tasuku thanked Yuno and promised to inspection the report later, acknowledging her hard work and diligence. Yuno thought on her progress, lamenting that she had found no new leads since the day of Harold's near execution. Yuno watched Harold's servants, noting how they skillfully avoided showing details about him. She analyzed their regulated behavior cautiously. According to her private inquiries, the inspector and investigators could not determine Harold's activities, especially in the agricultural sector. Small groups of farmers stayed tightly connected, making it difficult for Yuno to uncover details or infiltrate the community. Yuno recognized the test, realizing further inquiries would be limited for the moment. She ready to act when possibilities arose. Unexpectedly, Yuno encountered a familiar person. She smiled, curious if this person had found the details she sought. The stranger confirmed that Clara Ameller was in Bloche village. Yuno listened cautiously, absorbing every outline. Yuno inquired about Clara's awareness of Harold. The stranger clarified she knew him but would not discuss the incident. Yuno smiled and decided she had no choice but to visit Clara herself. She ready to travel and meet her directly. Quietly holding his tea, Harold Stokes watched the ceremonial setup, but internally he was actively preparing intricate strategies and results. Reflecting on his extensive awareness from the game, Harold cautiously devised calculated methods to control the Stokes household's financial and political strength. Predicting the Sumeragi household's financial desperation, Harold anticipated they would accept his plan, analyzing their weaknesses and potential vulnerabilities with accuracy. Meanwhile, the narrative suggested that Prospect's heroes, along with Liner and his allies, would eventually confront and test this looming threat in years. To secure his plan's success, Harold secretly sent a message to Tasuku, making sure he could act discreetly while controlling incidents. Studying the LP cultivation technique, Harold recognized perfect replication wasn't feasible, causing him to perform additional trials before presenting the method to Tasuku. Worried that irregularities in quality and security could undermine Tasuku's confidence, Harold exercised extreme caution in presenting the LP cultivation method proposal. Without Tasuku's assistance, Harold understood that he would eventually have to comply with the game's initial 8-year timeline, limiting available options. Resolved to succeed, Harold decided to approach Tasuku directly, taking a bold risk to guarantee approval for his cautiously calculated plan. Upon Tasuku's arrival, Harold confidently readied his plan, making sure that this high-risk gamble would succeed and achieve the desired results efficiently. Expressing gratitude, Tasuku recognized Harold's advice about the antibiotics, though Harold insisted it was a required assess, not a favor or courtesy. Tasuku watched the positive shift Harold's intervention created, while Harold stayed modest, pragmatically considering the subtle but important result of his deeds. Ridiculing Tasuku's bowing, Harold criticized the unnecessary subservience, showing his blunt personality and candidly highlighting the absurdity of the gesture to him. Tasuku found Harold's unexpected compliment intriguing, understanding its value and appreciating the rare acknowledgement of his promising abilities and potential contributions. Suggesting a calculated alliance, Harold invited Tasuku to follow him, proposing a partnership that could strengthen both their long-term plans and success. Harold presented Tasuku with a document, clarifying his motives clearly and urging careful inspection, while making sure that no flattery influenced Tasuku's judgment. Tasuku examined the trial results for crops treated with the life potion, noting Harold's meticulous experimentation and precise focus to every calculated outline. Astonished, Tasuku reviewed the harvest comparison graph, discovering yields far exceeded traditional methods, verifying that Harold's meticulous preparation and research had been effective. With subtle confidence, Harold smiled, aware the remarkable results would convince Tasuku of the technique's effectiveness and the credibility of his calculated proposal. Though initially skeptical, Tasuku admitted the results were extraordinary, acknowledging Harold's test and agreeing to step ahead with the plan deliberately. Understanding Harold's direction, Tasuku appreciated the antibiotic technique that saved the Sumeragi domain, regardless of the unusual nature and unexpected consequences of his actions. Emphasizing the benefits of merely presenting the data, Harold observed its significant value, and Tasuku cautiously weighed the evidence before drawing conclusions. Proposing the manuscript voluntarily, Harold demonstrated confidence in Tasuku, allowing him complete choice while emphasizing the importance of independence in choice-making. Watching Harold's separate deeds, Tasuku recognized he was not being manipulated, understanding that Harold's careful thought guided every choice he undertook strategically. Concluding that Harold's decisions arose from careful analysis rather than coercion, Tasuku recognized his autonomy, understanding the depth of Harold's separate calculated thinking. Considering the manuscript, Harold knew allowing Tasuku access could profit the Sumeragi household, yet he stayed composed, thoughtful, and composed throughout the choice. Tasuku identified Harold's purpose in letting him initiate discussion, understanding there was a deeper goal beyond merely presenting the manuscript for inspection. Thinking about Harold's genuine motives, Tasuku evaluated that showing flaws in the LP cultivation method might be part of a larger strategic assessment. Resolved to stop potential harm, Tasuku clenched his fist, focusing on analyzing Harold's motives while making sure the Sumeragi household stayed unharmed. Completely resolving to understand the circumstance, Tasuku committed to careful observation, interpreting Harold's request and discerning his plan before acting firmly or prematurely. Wandering Harold regarding the data, Tasuku probed his motives, challenging Harold's calculated thinking and capacity to handle scrutiny and evaluation effectively. Harold clarified that successful trial results would allow him to initiate production in his domain and gradually expand the LP cultivation technique nationwide. Worried about monopolization, Tasuku suspected Harold could centralize command over the technique, potentially creating risky power imbalances and concentrating wealth unethically across regions. Clarifying cautiously, Harold reassured Tasuku that hoarding could create conflicts, emphasizing careful management to stop adversaries and preserve quiet strategic implementation nationwide. Approving Harold's approach, Tasuku identified the importance of caution, while Harold recognized this understanding, establishing mutual confidence and alignment in their shared objectives. Approaching Tasuku, Harold clarified the goal of his proposal, indicating the initiation of an important plan requiring cooperation and careful consideration for success. Showing his purpose, Harold offered Tasuku partnership as joint developer of the LP cultivation technique, empowering him and sharing accountability for the strategy's implementation. Harold Stokes confidently declared himself the co-developer of the MCPV, startling everybody in the room. Kazuki observed that from now on, the Sumeragi name would be used in the project, departing other people puzzled, especially the Stokes household. Watching Harold's unusual behavior, household members wondered if he had secret powers and asked why his attitude had changed so greatly. It became clear that the Stokes parents would have boasted about Harold's abilities during the engagement meeting, if they completely identified his excellence. Reflecting on the household message, Harold recognized the Stokes household's decline was being highlighted, verifying the weight of his responsibilities. Harold Stokes inquired if showing the MCPV to the parents was a bad idea, assessing the dangers cautiously. He clarified that his parents' controlling nature could monopolize the project if they learned about it, emphasizing his shortage of paeans for inspections. Kazuki observed Harold was the easiest to handle among potential candidates, prepared to step aside if other people refused the offer. Harold recognized the intervention wouldn't be required, assured in his own capacity to accomplish the situation. He accepted the proposal, acknowledging that a person like him couldn't be stopped, securing the project's prospects. Tasuku Sumeragi struggled to imagine taking a strong stance without any foundation. Wondering Harold's confidence, he recognized that persuasion was required to stop the opposing side from retreating. Reflecting on Harold's calculated approach, Harold reviewed the message and disclosed crucial defenses, startling Tasuku, who could not believe the depth of preparation. Tasuku read the message cautiously, understanding the sacrifices made by families to secure economic assistance for their daughters. He evaluated how his own household spent independently and placed heavy taxes, realizing the contrast with Harold's careful preparation. Tasuku Sumeragi worried that residents would revolt, understanding the urgency of Harold's plan to safeguard Erika. Harold outlined moves, synthesize antibiotics, establish a defensive zone in the most contaminated site, and use industrial techniques to restore the economy. Tasuku recognized these three conditions would allow the Sumeragi household to rebuild dominance without relying on the Stokes household. He understood that the Stokes' control was now linked to the cancellation of Harold's engagement with Erika Sumeragi. Tasuku reviewed the industrial technique proposal, noting its link to the MCPV project portrayed in Harold's message. Harold inquired Tasuku if he had anticipated the circumstance from the outset, challenging his insight and plan. Tasuku admitted he hadn't, though the proposal was irresistible, causing Harold to question his reasoning. Harold thought that no one else could understand the complexities as he did, emphasizing his unique perspective. He cautioned that without confidence, the discussion would end, pressing Tasuku to commit to the plan. Regardless of the strain, Tasuku identified Harold's careful handling, allowing him to decide and progress further in the project. Harold evaluated that accepting the proposal could rescue residents, the household, and Erika's prospects, weighing the consequences carefully. Tasuku imagined that refusing would force him to accept the engagement with Erika, keeping the Sumeragi household reliant on Stokes. Harold recognized that if Tasuku refused, all the efforts to spread the MCPV would be wasted, making him the genuine loser. Regardless of the complexity, Harold framed the choice as a fair negotiation, giving the Sumeragi household complete agency without disadvantage. Tasuku at last decided to accept Harold's proposal, trusting his plan and making sure the project and Erika's security. Harold congratulated Tasuku for making a choice rapidly, indicating progress in their negotiation. He instructed Tasuku to prepare the Sumeragi fields and assign authoritative personnel, preparation to share the MCPV expertise. First, Tasuku understood that following solidifying the foundations, they would collaborate with a company to expand regulated fields and commercialize the technique. He offered to prepare anything Harold needed, making sure complete assistance and transparency in their cooperation. Harold requested to be connected with a person influential, emphasizing the importance of calculated relationships. During his stay, Harold aimed to accumulate as much fighting training as feasible to strengthen his position. Harold Stokes relaxed in the hot spring, sensing a rare moment of peace. Steam rose around him as he thought on the composed of the Sumeragi estate. He smiled quietly. Satisfied his practice with Tasuku had gone smoothly, and he had even found a capable sparring partner. Everything was aligning perfectly. Cherry petals floated in the air. Harold looked up at the sky, appreciating the beauty of the moment and the serene surroundings of the estate. Yuno entered the room, her arrival commanding focus. The household gathered, remaining for her to speak. She disclosed she had investigated Harold on Erika-sama's orders for a long period, verifying details that would control prospects' decisions within the Sumeragi household. Yuno apologized to her father for secretly using spies, clarifying she had an important verification to complete. She inquired whether he was aware of rumors that Harold had allegedly killed a servant and her child. Her father, astonished, confirmed that the rumors had reached the report, but wondered if they could be false. Yuno clarified that she had requested the assist of her group to investigate and uncover the truth. Yuno disclosed that the rumors were inaccurate, clearing Harold's name and verifying the circumstance was safe. Yuno clarified that the mother and child in question were currently housing in a small village called Blush, governed by another noble. She added that they had not changed their names, making it easier to track them through the villagers' accounts. Harold's allies observed the details, acknowledging that locating them had been straightforward, but the incident's details stayed sensitive. Yuno portrayed how she personally visited the household, though they refused to discuss the incidents of that moment. She neared the household, knocking on the door to confirm the arrival of a Meller-san, and gather direct details. The door opened warily as a woman inquired who had come to visit. Yuno introduced herself as a messenger from the Sumeragi household, expressing regret for the unannounced visit. She clarified that her inquiry worried Harold-sama, mentioning that a person in the household could have relevant details. Yuno disclosed that Erika, the Sumeragi child, and Harold were getting ready for their marriage, though some household members opposed it. The resident reacted with surprise and hesitation, realizing the implications of Harold-sama's arrival and the Sumeragi household's motives. Yuno clarified that Harold-sama was being harmed by rumors regardless of being alive and well, demonstrating worry for his reputation. She detailed how Harold quietly suffered the disgrace of being labeled a murderer, earning contempt from the residents. Yuno offered a solution. If the household supported her secretly, she could gather allies to assist Harold without showing the truth publicly. Harold remained standing quietly, unaware of the assistance forming around him, while Yuno tried to convince the household to act discreetly. The resident, moved and conflicted, recognized that Harold's suffering had happened because of them, sensing the burden of accountability. Yuno held the resident's hands, acknowledging that she understood the hesitation to share the truth and the delicate circumstance. She expressed her wish to do whatever she could to assist Harold and Erika, even if it could cause personal challenge. The resident agreed and invited Yuno inside, understanding that the conversation required privacy and a grave discussion. The resident decided to assist Harold in any method feasible, choosing to act for his protection and well-being. The sequence of incidents started when Erika unintentionally harmed Harold, causing him to deceive the household leader regarding her magical challenging. Secretly, Harold granted freedom to Erika and her child, providing transportation, a dwelling, and required supplies, making sure their safe departure unhindered. Erika discovered Harold's genuine purpose. He bore a magical mark to guarantee their security, preventing their escape from being disclosed. Getting ready to depart, Erika faced Harold's inquiry about her destination, showing his genuine worry and protective instincts over her movements. Reflecting on her behavior, Erika admitted ignorance and inability to understand Harold's reasoning, acknowledging she had even raised her hand mistakenly. Erika resolved she could no longer leave Harold's injury unattended and decided to accept complete accountability for her previous mistakes sincerely. Harold clarified that he risked peril exclusively to safeguard them and advised Erika to preserve his secret with utmost protection. Realizing repercussions, Erika understood that sharing any details could increase Harold's doubt and distance, potentially harming confidence between them further. Harold provided reassurance, clarifying that sensing compelled to apologize was natural and a reasonable reaction considering her deeds previously. Wondering sincerity, he probed whether her apology truly sought understanding or merely served to ease her own guilty conscience internally. Panic-stricken, Erika was uncertain how to amend her mistakes or issue a proper apology, sensing overwhelmed by the circumstance's complexity. Gently, Harold placed his hand on Erika's head, suggesting she could offer prospects assistance in meaningful ways. Instead of asking for forgiveness directly, he clarified Erika should focus on understanding his deeds and gradually growing closer through observation. Harold emphasized that watching his efforts cautiously would foster genuine comprehension, encouraging Erika to engage thoughtfully and develop meaningful insight. Regardless of Harold's brilliance, he cautioned that he could not require friends, making the task challenging but critically important for Erika's growth. Erika was cautioned that regardless of her dedication, Harold would never completely address the depths and motives of her heart. He inquired whether she truly controlled the resolve to believe in him and actively follow his direction and decisions faithfully. Harold reminded her that, following careful observation, she could decide her deeds and reflect on raising her hand against him. Quietly, Erika accepted Harold's advice, demonstrating comprehension and agreement, acknowledging his direction with a simple and sincere confirmation of understanding. Watching her growth, Harold thought that regardless of her initial engagement disappointment, she matured significantly, learning accountability and seeing situations with clarity. Harold identified that their child's deep emotions would naturally strengthen, growing in intensity due to her unwavering protection and affection over moment. The team reached their destination, an important practice site, as the carriage reached it, indicating the start of a significant martial arts program. Watching the largest combat arts temple within Sumeragi domain, they saw children and adults practicing archery, swordsmanship, sorcery, and fighting skills daily. Harold inquired about Erika's arrival at the temple, seeking reasoning for her position and goal within this prestigious training environment. He clarified that Erika had reached it at an adversary's request, yet the boy chose to observe quietly without intervention or interference. Itsuki readied thoroughly for practice, putting on his kimono and equipping himself, readying for combat arts practice with focused resolve and power. Greeting Erika with a broad smile, Itsuki conveyed excitement and acknowledgement, expressing happiness at her arrival and shared moment of arrival. Harold embraced Erika warmly, reminiscing on her growth and the collection of memories they would training together in the forthcoming moment. Itsuki asked whether Erika could truly test him, highlighting the disparity between child and adult capabilities and the potential for ability development. Regardless of her years, Itsuki insisted Erika could still participate, encouraging her to recognize her capacity for handling responsibilities and confronting difficulties directly. Introducing himself officially, Itsuki disclosed he was Erika's older brother, establishing familial connections and clarifying relationships for Harold's understanding of the household. Reminding Harold of his position as Erika's fiancé, Itsuki emphasized accountability, and the importance of upholding his commitments seriously. Overjoyed, Itsuki ran eagerly towards Erika, shouting affectionately, "Little sister," with excitement, illustrating the severe bond and playful household relationships between them. Watching with slight amusement, Harold and Erika watched Itsuki's overflowing enthusiasm, highlighting the lively, playful relationship and strong sibling bond they shared naturally.
Harold Stokes grew irritated as Kazuki, wearing a wide grin, neared him unexpectedly. Downstairs, students gathered to watch a match between Itsuki and Erika's fiancé, anticipation filling the hall. Harold and Kazuki hurried ahead, stepping onto the polished wooden floor. The match about to begin, Kazuki lunged at Harold with a playful smirk, causing Harold to flail and scowl in frustration. Nearby, Erika's older brother watched, getting ready weapons. While everybody readied for the forthcoming match, Harold watched Kazuki energetically getting ready, resolved to do his most effective for Erika. Kazuki handed Harold a bamboo blade, expecting him to demonstrate his ability while Harold worried quietly. They began practicing swinging and parrying, with Harold noting the weapon sensed surprisingly light. Harold evaluated why the bamboo blade was so easy to handle compared to his usual iron one from the stands. The trainees observed intently, and Harold sensed a mix of nerves and focus. Itsuki Sumeragi readied for the match, chosen by Tasuku as Harold's skilled rival, completely aware of the world's dangers. He thought on Harold's strengths, aware he would eventually master the overwhelming speed and superior swordsmanship in this body. Itsuki remembered his own practice, assured that consistent practice had readied him to command this body successfully. The match conditions were clarified, only bamboo swords were allowed, and criticizes to the head, confront, or use of magic were forbidden. Itsuki readied himself as the victor would be resolved when one rival was incapacitated or forfeited, focusing intently on the fight onward. Itsuki nodded, agreeing to the match conditions without objection, appreciating the fairness provided. The instructor emphasized security, hoping to prevent grave injuries while Harold evaluated the restrictions. Reasonable, Harold thought on his power, recalling his earlier period practice against adults and understanding he must hold back. He decided to give Itsuki a handicap to make the match fair, respecting his rival's youth and status. Harold offered the first step to Itsuki, encouraging him to unleash his most effective assault while remaining alert. The match officially began as the instructor called for the fighters to get prepared and outset. Itsuki moved with startling speed, swinging his bamboo blade before Harold could react, taking him off guard. Harold's eyes widened, wrestling to track Itsuki's lightning-fast movements with focus and resolve. The swords clashed, spinning through the air, departing Harold and spectators stunned at Itsuki's unmatched accuracy. Itsuki smiled confidently, showing that he had not yet been grave, pointing at even greater ability to come. Harold was astonished by Itsuki's power, astonished at how fast and skilled his rival had become. He couldn't defend against Itsuki's sudden walks, realizing the fight was more challenging than anticipated. Itsuki matched Harold's stance and adjusted his blade's trajectory, showing precise command and awareness. Instead of striking Harold directly, Itsuki deliberately knocked down his bamboo blade, indicating a desire for a genuine contest. Harold understood Itsuki had been seeking a rival he could fight at complete power, at last understanding their shared drive. Itsuki recognized Harold's ability, expressing regret for previously underestimating him and seeking a grave match. Harold confirmed he had been looking for this kind of rival all along, appreciating the test. Itsuki ready to make the first blow, holding his weapon confidently and focusing on the match. With a grin, Harold invited Itsuki to assault, daring him to match his speed and ability in a genuine contest.
Itsuki faced his rival on the wide practice ground, wooden blade in hand, getting ready for a grave duel, resolved to honor his father's promise. Itsuki advanced with focus, prepared to match every blow his rival delivered. He moved with startling speed, rolling and striking, closing distance faster than anyone anticipated. His rival tried to keep pace, but Itsuki's movements surpassed demands, blending accuracy with agility. Exposing his rival's guard, Itsuki pressed ahead, keeping command of the match as the training ground echoed with clashing wood. Itsuki moved swiftly, blocking and parrying each assault, his focus unwavering as he assessed his rival. He wondered how long the match would last, planning every blow with accuracy while remaining on guard. Itsuki recognized that if his rival could not match his speed, the criticizes would become predictable and easy to read. His rival struggled to adapt, each defensive step departing openings that Itsuki exploited with careful timing. Even if his rival could step rapidly, Itsuki's superior fighting training kept him ahead, controlling the flow of the match. Itsuki continued to press his advantage, striking firmly while his rival struggled to preserve defense. The rival staggered under pressure, nearly losing balance as Itsuki anticipated every movement. With quick reflexes, Itsuki seized the moment to grab his rival's bamboo blade, asserting command. The rival was stunned, realizing he had been outmaneuvered just before his blow could land. Itsuki stayed composed and focused, getting ready for the following step as his opponent scrambled to regain footing. Itsuki launched a decisive heavy palm blow, hitting his rival with precise timing. His rival fell, and the referee called for the match to stop as Itsuki held his stance. Both boys caught their breath, staring at each other across the practice ground, drained yet focused. The rival recognized he had lost to a younger, yet more skilled Itsuki. Acknowledging his rival's power, regardless of the defeat, the boy smiled, inviting Harold for another bout, demonstrating respect and resolve for prospects' practice. Itsuki asked Harold's defense, teasing him about his toughness regardless of using bamboo swords. He disclosed that the final blow was a palm blow, not a bamboo blade assault, surprising Harold. Harold reacted with astonishment and panic, while Itsuki laughed quietly, appreciating his rival's power. Itsuki recognized Harold was not only a rival but also his little brother-in-law, accepting the dynamic they walked together beyond. Itsuki playful, Harold flustered, marking the outset of a friendly but competitive relationship. Harold watched Itsuki, noting how he had shifted from hostility to playful familiarity following the match. He thought on his own weaknesses, realizing losing to a younger boy highlighted the need for more practice. Harold looked over a scenic valley, cherry blossoms and mountains spreading before him. Soothing his thinking, he observed the Japan-like architecture and serene atmosphere, sensing the world's quiet yet unknown essence. Harold recalled being reborn as the antagonist, now 5 months into this new life, aware that damage lay onward and uncertainty loomed. Harold pondered his fate, wondering whether he could survive until the main hero completed the narrative, and whether he could ever return to his initial world. Overwhelmed by frustration, Harold struggled with self-doubt, sensing uncool for faltering against Itsuki, regardless of his resolve not to lose. Erika emerged unexpectedly, taking Harold off guard. Her arrival startled him, departing him speechless and adding a sense of composed and intrigue to the moment. Harold remained standing beneath the cherry blossoms, reflecting on his weakness. He sensed unsteady, realizing the real Harold would never show such emotion. Abruptly, Erika emerged on the path onward. Harold froze, startled by her arrival, unsure how to respond to her unexpected arrival. Elsewhere, Clara recalled a recent incident. Sensing guilty for teasing Harold too much, she hoped to make amends for her deeds. A friend advised Erika to show Harold some appreciation, suggesting that her focus could lift his spirits and ease his burden. Erika, puzzled by the advice, wondered if Harold was truly sensing down. She decided to observe him more cautiously under the gentle sunlight. Erika searched through the garden, resolved to find Harold. She refused to lose sight of him, calling out as she ran. Harold wiped his tears, wrestling with his emotions. He tried to remain composed, concealing the vulnerability he rarely showed. A distant observer observed Harold's brilliance and power, remarking how his confidence sometimes alienated other people, along with those who cared for him. Erika neared Harold warily, spotting how he had endured hardship alone. She wondered if he had always faced difficulties by himself. Harold's unshakable courage and arrogance thought his inner confidence. Erika recognized that regardless of appearances, he confronted difficulties head-on and never wavered. Harold had never shown his weakness to anyone. Power alone could not define him, yet he carried his burdens quietly. He separated himself, masking his vulnerability with pride and arrogance to safeguard those he cared about. Erika thought on her desire to truly understand Harold. She wished to become a person who could see beyond his outward confidence. Standing across from Harold, she decided to no longer hesitate. Even if unprepared, she wanted to assist him completely. Harold noticed her resolve. He recognized that someday, Erika would become a person capable of lifting the burden from his shoulders. Erika recognized Harold's ability following their sparring match, impressed even as an observer unknown with swordsmanship. Harold commented on the match, smiling and suggesting he lost the combat but won the war. While Erika apologized for overstepping, Harold struggled to understand Erika's motives, incapable to discern her genuine goal behind her remarks and deeds. He marveled at how naturally Erika could speak to a person she disliked, masking her motives with calmness. Harold sensed uncomfortable, realizing he didn't want to be constrained by her arrival, conflicted about their dynamic. Harold told Erika to step aside, claiming he didn't have moment for distractions, asserting his focus on urgent matters. Erika inquired him to make moment, insisting that this moment was important and required his complete focus. Harold begrudgingly listened, noting her polite approach and attempting to process the sincerity behind her remarks. Erika apologized for her earlier period behavior, bowing deeply and acknowledging her prior mistakes, demonstrating respect and humility. Harold thought, understanding that Erika's effort to reconcile was deliberate, even if he found her deeds both bothersome and purposeful. Harold recognized Erika's courage in expressing regret, understanding the virtue that made her so respected by other people. Harold, overwhelmed, thought to himself that her kindness was now directed at him, making his heart pound nervously. Abruptly, his instincts surged and he lashed out with a blade, pushing her away regardless of her quiet intent. Erika's apology seemed meaningless to Harold as he criticized the method she blended kindness with deceptive benevolence. He scorned her arrival, calling her an eyesore and demanding she stay out of his sight, rejecting her warmth. Harold and Erika faced each other quietly, strain lingering in the air as they assessed one another. Harold admitted to overreacting and taking out his frustrations on Erika. Realizing he had been unfair, Erika sensed she had worked poorly as well, acknowledging her mistakes and calling herself the worst. Harold criticized Erika's kindness, calling it deceptive benevolence, noting the power and restraint required to truly observe another. Erika thought on the subtle strength of passive kindness, realizing she must understand it to grow and respond to insults successfully. Erika decided to understand Harold better and to become a person capable of supporting him, watching his burdens closely. She recognized that she would not ask him to remain but promised herself to catch up. No importance the distance. Erika vowed never to allow Harold to confront his difficulty alone, committing to be a steady arrival at his side. Harold Stokes woke up in a Japanese-style room, disoriented and unsure of how he reached it there. Stepping beyond, he examined the Sumeragi residence, noting the traditional architecture and quiet surroundings, though he stumbled slightly. He recalled being injured during a subjugation campaign, realizing he had been transported to Japan while unconscious, yet the circumstance sensed uncertain. Erika's Sumeragi watched from a distance, worried about Harold's condition and quietly monitoring his recovery. The elders reported Harold had minor cuts, a bruise, and feasible broken bones, though swelling had mostly subsided. The elders discussed Harold's condition, noting his high fever and the need for ongoing medical protection. Erika Sumeragi evaluated remaining for Harold to recover before wondering him about the unusual circumstances surrounding his arrival. Yuno entered, bringing fresh clothes for Erika, indicating preparation for the day and daily routines resuming. Erika, resolved, requested Yuno to teach her healing sorcery, hoping to assist Harold and other people in the prospects. Meanwhile, Harold sat beyond, nursing his injuries and a heavy head, slowly regaining power following the recent ordeal. Harold thought on his recent combat, realizing he lacked practice and could not stay as firm as anticipated. Erika organized stacks of texts on healing sorcery, clarifying which texts were essential for beginning her examens. An elder scolded Erika internally, claiming her devotion to Harold could never reach him. Calling her efforts futile regardless of doubts, Erika decided to learn healing sorcery, resolved to be capable if Harold ever needed assist. Harold evaluated whether to focus on physical power or extend his practice duration. Preparation: how to improve deliberately. Harold and Erika each decided internally to work hard, resolved to improve their abilities. They reminded themselves of the importance of consistent effort, aware that diligence was the only path ahead. Far away, troops faced a risky circumstance on the Bina Plateau, confronting a monstrous threat with caution. A commander ordered the troops to pull back, warning that continuing the assault could be fatal, but some struggled to obey. Harold emerged, resolute and commanding, prepared to accept decision regardless of the danger. Asserting his presence in the battlefield, Harold faced a massive armored beast standing quietly regardless of the creature's roar and intimidating arrival. He watched the monster's movements, noting that its bark was bigger than its bite, analyzing the threat. With accuracy, Harold dodged and ready to blow, prepared for the beast's aggressive charge. Following defeating the creature, he instructed the other people to collect the horn, suggesting blacksmiths would find it valuable. Abruptly, more creatures emerged, casting spells towards the team, compelling the soldiers to scramble and retreat while Harold prepared to defend. The ground punisher descended, a sudden assault menacing the team as Harold faced the oncoming risk. Harold remained standing firm, assessing the terrain and getting ready his following step against the mighty monster. He sprinted ahead with accuracy, positioning himself to intercept the beast while keeping his blade prepared. The monsters charged in unison, compelling Harold to dodge and maneuver cautiously as their momentum drove them ahead. With resolve, Harold aimed to end the fight swiftly, promising to blow the creatures in a single decisive blow. Harold unleashed Thunderbird, striking with accuracy as the magical assault hit the ground, altering the battlefield. The troops and onlookers were stunned. Astonished, Harold had taken down a hornhead monster all by himself. Harold demanded the group rapidly dispose of the monster's remains, keeping strict discipline regardless of their awe. He commanded Squad A to obtain the horn, while other squads handled the body, making sure efficiency and order. The troops discussed Harold's power, realizing his ability far exceeded demands, especially for newcomers encountering him for the first moment. The troops thought on Harold's earlier period, recalling that almost 3 years ago, he volunteered for a risky subjugation campaign. They observed that, although Harold had always been mighty, the Stokes household's concerns about potential injuries were valid. The troops discussed how, if Harold had been hurt, Hayden-sama and other people would have worked firmly, retrieving weapons and managing the circumstance. Harold, listening quietly, stayed assured in his power and in the judgment of his peers. The narrative momentarily flashed back to 3 years ago at the Sumeragi estate, highlighting Harold's background and early practice. 2 troops carried an injured companion, shouting for a person to assist as they struggled under the burden. Yuno and other people observed in astonishment, realizing Harold had been hurt by a monster during a subjugation campaign. They guided Harold to a safe room, calling for a doctor or a person skilled in healing sorcery. The troops clarified the circumstance, acknowledging Harold had shielded them from the monster's assault. Despite the injury sustained, Harold, annoyed, scolded the troops for their weakness, asserting that if they disagreed, they should fight themselves. Harold dismissed the troops' apologies, inquiring to be left alone and emphasizing the importance of secrecy. He instructed them not to reveal the incident to anyone and to guarantee all troops were informed and cautious. The troops, embarrassed and annoyed, thought on how pathetic it sensed to be shielded by the one they should be protecting. They recognized Harold had worked to safeguard them from penalty if the Lord discovered his injuries, demonstrating foresight and care. One soldier decided to become stronger, inspired by Harold's ability and protection, vowing to improve in the prospects. Harold thought on his fighting training, realizing he had grown strong enough to safeguard other people effectively. He evaluated that countless monsters stayed unexplored, and collecting more data could assist stop injuries among his soldiers. Harold wondered whether Tasuku was also progressing on his own, thinking about allies and their growth in alternate. He decided it could be wise to visit the Sumeragi estate, preparation to combine his training with direction and assistance. Harold walked beneath the blooming cherry trees, his expression unreadable, lost in thought about forthcoming responsibilities. He continued along the stone path, careful moves echoing as petals drifted around him, a quiet morning developing. Harold reached the estate and was greeted by a familiar person, a trusted advisor who commended his recent campaign efforts. Together, they discussed negotiations and strategies, reviewing methods to ease the Stokes household's burdens and implement new cultivation policies. The advisor observed the timing of Harold's prospects' responsibilities, while Harold evaluated how deeds now would shape the household's future. Harold smirked quietly, thinking about the engagement's eventual cancellation while his advisor watched him quietly. They walked across the garden bridge, discussing earlier period campaigns and Harold's encounters with risky monsters during the missions. The advisor reassured Harold, noting that his repeated staying alive from severe injuries proved his resilience and ability. Harold and the advisor exchanged reflections on power and growth, acknowledging their mutual respect and the lessons of earlier period battles. The advisor reminded Harold about a message from Itsuki and suggested participating in the forthcoming fighting tournament at Delphi. Harold listened as the advisor clarified the conditions of the fighting tournament, noting years' divisions and security measures. Harold smiled confidently, choosing he would participate and evaluate his abilities against new difficulties. The advisor returned to work, warning Harold not to overexert himself, while Harold waved in acknowledgement. Sitting alone on the bridge, Harold thought on the tournament, potential strong opponents, and the dangers involved. He also evaluated his distant relationship with Erika and the Sumeragi household, realizing he must balance plan with diplomacy. Harold thought about the miasma in Sumeragi domain, aware he must remain vigilant until the main hero and their party confronted it. He clenched his fists, resolved to stop all death flag sprouts in the 5 years leading up to the main narrative elsewhere. Liner Griffith marveled at Ocean Town Defit, astonished by the buildings, ships, and bustling population. Colette Ameler scolded Liner for his excitement, urging him to focus on signing up for the fighting tournament. Liner sprinted onward, departing Colette and other people behind, eager to explore the town and embrace the forthcoming difficulties. Colette ready to retrieve Liner, who had wandered off excitedly, while Liner's father sighed at his son's restless power. Colette received instructions to obtain Liner and then meet at the fountain following he completed registration for the tournament. She hurried through the town looking for Liner, calling out as she tried to catch up with him. Colette stumbled and fell, but rapidly recovered, helped by bystanders who ensured she was unharmed. In a quiet moment, Erika Sumeragi remained standing gracefully, watching the activity around her, embodying composed and calmness amidst the turmoil. Erika noticed Colette scraping her knee and offered assistance, urging them to step to a less crowded site. She assured Colette that helping her was not a burden, demonstrating calmness and kindness. Colette expressed her gratitude while being guided by Erika, sensing reassured by her composed arrival. Erika's gentle demeanor left a strong impression on Colette, who watched her closely and quietly together. They walked while Erika clarified her limited healing abilities, and Colette recognized Erika's quiet dedication and practice. Colette was astonished to see Erika, spotting her composed demeanor and calmness while assisting other people. Erika clarified she was simply an escort, not participating directly in the tournament, though she was present for direction. The two discussed their friends and aspirations, with Colette supporting Liner's aim to join the chivalric order. Erika commended Colette's dedication and observed the power and potential of the children from Blush Village. Colette thought on her step 3 years ago, and Erika confirmed Colette's deeds aligned with demands, demonstrating quiet approval. Colette expressed her thanks to Erika, attempting to repay her for the kindness shown following the earlier incident. Erika suggested forming a strong bond, promising that when they met again, their link would allow them to see each other. Colette was astonished by the proposal to become friends and hesitated, unsure how to respond. Erika clarified that if they met again, it would confirm that their friendship was genuine, easing Colette's doubts. Colette agreed to hold on to her feelings until their following meeting. Understanding the importance of their bond, Colette called out to Erika as she readied to depart, expressing optimism to see her again. Erika smiled quietly, walking away while keeping her calmness, departing a lasting impression on Colette. Colette observed Erika leave, her hands clasped to her chest, sensing the burden of their meeting and the promise of friendship. In the Grand Hotel lobby of Delphi, Harold waited patiently for a person's arrival, while nobles and travelers moved around him quietly. Dressed in elegant attire, Erika entered the hall gracefully, bowing slightly as Harold at once noticed her punctual arrival, pleasantly astonished. Realizing Erika's unexpected arrival, Harold's mind raced rapidly while the three exchanged cautious gestures, politely acknowledging each other's careful arrival. Unsure how to proceed, Harold hesitated momentarily while Erika insisted on taking a seat, keeping a regulated but strained atmosphere nearby. During the meal, Harold cautiously clarified Erika's position in accompanying him for protection during the forthcoming fighting tournament, ensuring their safety effectively. Regardless of insisting he would remain unharmed, Harold listened as Kazuki highlighted Erika's protective accompaniment, reminding him that caution is better than regret. Clarifying that a meeting was essential, Kazuki allowed Harold faster reactions if risk emerged, a proposal he evaluated reasonable yet suspicious. Remaining silent, Erika watched Kazuki and Harold leave the hall, while Yuno discreetly emerged to check on her securely in distance. Yuno inquired whether Erika had informed Colette about the meeting, but Erika chose to remain silent, protecting secrets with careful discretion. Erika thought internally that Colette's staying alive must remain unknown, emphasizing the importance of secrecy and careful plan throughout these developing incidents carefully. Standing quietly on the balcony, Erika decided not to question Harold regarding his secrets until he personally chose to reveal them clearly. Considering Harold's genuine nature, Yuno recognized a person understanding him could become a potential ally in forthcoming conflicts, proposing strategic future advantages thoughtfully. Getting ready mentally, Erika pondered her following meeting with Harold, certain it would only occur when he disclosed the complete truth carefully. Watching the circumstance, Yuno evaluated Erika's feasible developing feelings for Harold, realizing prospects encounters might introduce complex emotional consequences over time. Accepting potential results, Erika decided that if Harold reciprocated, a romantic rivalry could emerge, and she would remain at peace with circumstances. Arriving at the massive fighting tournament arena, Harold watched the Grand Colosseum where elaborate festivities were readied, taking in the impressive surroundings cautiously. Walking through busy streets, Harold noticed taverns already complete of early activity, while nearby, rowdy men began shouting aggressively, initiating a fight rapidly. Reacting swiftly, Harold intervened firmly, striking with accuracy to stop escalation, making sure the conflict did not grow uncontrollable among the brawling men. His skilled movements caused aggressors to stumble backward, astonishing the watching townspeople, who paused to witness Harold's impressive command over the developing circumstance. Continuing confidently, Harold moved ahead without hesitation, showing power and focus while quietly getting ready for challenges awaiting him during the upcoming tournament events. Watching a drunken brawl, Harold quietly intervened, scolding the aggressors while keeping readiness to act firmly, preventing harm in the chaotic street surroundings. The intoxicated men reacted with defiance, refusing to retreat, regardless of Harold's warnings, resolved to assert their arrival, escalating tensions in the chaotic street site. Knights from the Holy Royal Chivalric Order reached it, moving with authority, capturing focus, and creating command within the crowd to accomplish escalating public disorder. Aware of timing, Harold ran ahead to address brash attackers, making sure no one would be injured while deliberately controlling the sudden street altercation. Showing precise ability, Harold struck one aggressor mid-charge, incapacitating him successfully while keeping command and focus on the larger challenges that awaited ahead. Following the brawl, townspeople watched Harold quietly, clapping in appreciation for his effective and decisive intervention, acknowledging his impressive capacity to accomplish conflicts safely. One of the knights neared Harold, praising his remarkable ability while inquiring for a clear reasoning of incidents to convey understanding to the surrounding crowd. Harold recounted the incident quietly, clarifying that he prevented one drunken man from crashing into other people, making sure security while maintaining composure and authority effectively. The knight cautiously inspected Harold for injuries, relieved to see him unharmed, as Harold assured him that no significant damage had happened during decision. Harold's mentor began stretching cautiously, showing proper techniques while reminding him to always respect practice, making sure every part of his body stayed fully prepared. Cody pressed Harold to retell the narrative, making him impatient, insisting that bystanders could offer explanations, causing Harold additional irritation and psychological pressure quietly. Cody inquired how to accomplish people involved in the previous brawl, and the knight decided they should recover, allowing caution and careful observation deliberately. Realizing he had forgotten Harold's name, Cody sensed embarrassed and reflective, thinking about his confuse and how it could have influenced their prior interaction. Harold noticed Cody approaching unexpectedly, causing him to fluster and react with surprise at the sudden arrival of a familiar figure nearby. Cody's arrival was clarified by his Holy Royal Chivalric Order background, highlighting previous involvement with the main hero party and his occasional participation in mercenary duties. Reflecting on Cody, Harold evaluated him as a supporting figure, pondering how a relationship could have disclosed valuable internal details about the protagonist's strategic party dynamics. Thinking about prospects' encounters, Harold hoped he could develop a better acquaintance with Cody following moment, preparation interactions carefully for potential strategic advantages later. At the arena, Kazuki greeted Harold, mentioning that he signed him up under an alias, making sure anonymity while allowing participation in the event discreetly. Clarifying the townspeople's position, Kazuki observed Harold's parents could oppose his participation publicly, emphasizing caution while still providing Harold the opportunity to compete securely. Getting ready for his first match in the 13 and under division, Harold faced Malik Makia with the crowd eagerly watching, anticipating the performance of the newcomers cautiously. Harold asked Isuki's unusual behavior and suggestion to hide his confront, sensing annoyed and irritated by the unnecessary theatrics presented in front of everybody. Watching quietly, the crowd and knights observed, while Harold mentally scolded the name and mass decisions, sensing embarrassed and slightly annoyed by their absurdity. Mentally noting the training, Harold remembered the incident as a significant lesson, while observers found him intimidating without realizing his internal thinking and reflections. Expressing irritation at Itsuki, Harold decided to finish the match rapidly, intending to minimize distractions and prevent prolonged engagement with the annoying theatrics. Turning his focus, Harold noticed Colette's arrival, startled by her arrival, marking a pivotal moment in the tournament and setting up prospects' interactions cautiously.
Harold Stokes and Hirasawa Kazuki strolled through the bustling marketplace, choosing meals warily while watching the crowd with curious, alert eyes. Colette and her companion watched the enormous arena, filled with enthusiastic spectators. Kazuki spotted her, worry and resolve clearly evident. Reflecting on his deeds, Kazuki recognized concealing his genuine name brought unforeseen complications, increasing the dangers involved in every move carefully. Spotting Colette's arrival, Kazuki understood the forthcoming match would be critical, as the arena announcer signaled, raising strain among all participants. Swords collided violently, starting the match. Kazuki concentrated intensely, deliberately timing his strikes while Colette parried skillfully, escalating the fierce conflict further. Moving rapidly, Kazuki's blade forced Colette to submit. She knelt gracefully, understanding his mastery while the surrounding crowd observed quietly. The arena officially declared Kazuki the victor. He exited discreetly, pondering that Colette's attendance indicated stronger challengers could emerge shortly. Abruptly, Liner Griffith, celebrated hero of brave hearts, emerged. Kazuki recognized the looming conflict, aware destiny brought them together years prematurely. Focusing intently, Kazuki readied himself mentally. Officials announced the following match, and he evaluated the arena meticulously for any tactical advantage. Liner confidently stepped into the arena, raising his blade high as Blush Village's challenger. The spectators erupted, indicating severe competition beginning at once. Kazuki stared, stunned, as Liner Griffith unexpectedly emerged. He asked Liner's sudden arrival, recalling the massive ship that recently entered the harbor. Considering the chance of withdrawing, Kazuki feared the outcome could replicate the morning's incidents, evaluating the potential risks from the stands carefully. Harold thought on previous disputes, remembering the Clara incident and choosing to act with respect, intending to stop misunderstandings with Liner efficiently. Reviewing his interactions with Cody and the main storyline, he identified that seeking friendship with Liner could prevent unnecessary conflicts successfully. This moment. Meeting Liner now allowed Kazuki to evaluate his power and potentially form a prospects alliance, getting ready mentally and deliberately for forthcoming challenges. During the match, Kazuki analyzed Liner Griffith's movements cautiously, contemplating how providing direction could enhance Liner's forces and improve performance during prison raids successfully. Resolved not to miss this opportunity, he understood that assisting Liner could create benefits surpassing those originally presented in the main storyline efficiently. Liner celebrated his victory in the match energetically, while Kazuki watched quietly, evaluating his abilities and strategies, noting important details for prospects' battles. Kazuki meticulously readied how to approach Liner respectfully, preparation remarks and deeds to build confidence without offending him during their initial interactions. Carefully, directly greeting Liner, Kazuki called him Red Head, signifying the beginning of a cautious alliance while cautiously monitoring Liner's reactions throughout their conversation deliberately. Confronting each other, Kazuki and Liner assessed their focus and readiness, studying potential strategies thoroughly while strain filled the air in the arena intensely. Understanding Kazuki at once, Liner excitedly recalled his incredible speed and requested permission to learn Kazuki's technique for improving his personal fighting abilities efficiently. Considering the request, Kazuki thought on his own weighted practice and speed routines, appreciating Liner's genuine enthusiasm for learning and self-improvement sincerely. Liner officially introduced himself while extending a hand. Kazuki reminded him to remain focused, emphasizing the importance of concentration over unnecessary verbal chatter cautiously. They shook hands firmly, indicating mutual respect while establishing a tentative alliance, both getting ready for forthcoming difficulties and prospects' duels with careful attention. Liner greeted Harold warmly, expressing his optimism for a good relationship. while Harold responded warily but shook hands firmly to preserve professionalism. Watching Liner, the other participants observed his ability and recognized it. Some competitors expressed playful rivalry, understanding Harold's capabilities among the assembled challengers. Harold clearly stated he was not obligated to share his techniques, daring other people to attempt matching his abilities, challenging their confidence deliberately and cautiously. Enthusiastically, Liner accepted the test, resolved to compete against Harold, assured in his own abilities and motivated to learn from this meeting. Harold cautioned Liner about the vast difference in their power levels, yet Liner stayed undeterred, resolutely committed to learning and improving his abilities steadily. Concluding their discussion, Harold and Liner recognized the focus they had drawn. Kazuki observed the subtle pressure anticipated in the forthcoming match thoughtfully. Reflecting on the circumstance, Kazuki identified that challenging Liner, destined to become the world's savior, made each meeting meaningful, worthwhile, and deliberately significant.
Harold Stokes grips his blade tightly, getting ready for the moment he has anticipated. His expression is grave, reflecting the burden of the combat ahead. The arena is packed with spectators. Harold confronts Liner Griffith, the following rival in the 13 and under division. Both stand prepared, sizing each other up before the fight begins. The crowd observes quietly as the match is about to outset. Observers hold their breath, aware the outcome could change the tournament's course. Liner Griffith moves ahead with resolve, indicating that he intends to fight Harold with all his power. Harold quietly acknowledges the test, prepared to demonstrate that his abilities are not merely remarks. The duel begins with tension filling the arena. The match begins as Harold and Liner Griffith charge at each other. The arena echoes with the crowd's anticipation. Liner strikes first, swinging his blade with accuracy and force. Harold braces himself, keeping focus. Blades clash several times, sparks flying. Each movement tests the other's speed, power, and plan. Harold remains composed, countering every assault. Liner presses harder, attempting to eliminate through Harold's defense. Harold parries with steady hands, demonstrating ability beyond his years. Liner pauses, astonished at Harold's calmness and talent. Doubt creeps in as he wonders if Harold could truly become a hero. Liner grows annoyed as Harold remains passive, dodging, criticizes effortlessly. The crowd doubts why Harold isn't completely compelling. Harold, standing composed, evaluates Liner's efforts worthless. His focus is sharp, analyzing every movement with accuracy. Liner tries several times, but Harold's defense is flawless. Every blow fails to make the slightest impact, departing Liner drained. Abruptly, Harold shifts aggressively, taking Liner off guard. His movements are swift, calculated, and overwhelming. Liner recognizes Harold's strength is beyond his expectation. Harold asserts command, showing that he can dominate at any moment he chooses. Liner has difficulty to match Harold's speed and accuracy. Even with practiced swords, Harold walks effortlessly, departing Liner in astonishment. Harold remarks on how Liner cannot respond, emphasizing the gap in their ability levels. Liner begins to realize the genuine test. Memories of severe practice flash through Liner's mind. He has endured rigorous practice and sparred with skilled adults, yet still has difficulty against Harold. Liner acknowledges that regardless of his prior victories, Harold's ability is unmatched. Doubt and frustration weigh heavily on him. The match ends abruptly. Harold wins easily, startling everybody, while Liner is left astonished, wondering how a person so young could overpower him. Harold walks quietly across the arena, departing Liner and the spectators watching in stunned silence. He doubts why the match is being ended prematurely, challenging the authority of the official. Ignoring the official's objections, Harold walks ahead, demonstrating that he can continue regardless of broken conditions or weapons. Harold nears another participant, commanding them to give up with quiet authority, asserting his dominance without aggression. Going back to the arena, Harold picks up a weapon, indicating that he is prepared to continue, departing Liner astonished and the crowd murmuring in surprise. Harold addresses Liner directly, telling him to pick up his weapon if he still has the will to fight. His gaze is steady, commanding respect. Liner looks astonished, uncertain whether he can continue. The burden of Harold's ability and calmness leaves him hesitant, yet he senses the urge to rise and keep fighting. Liner knelt quietly on the practice field, his gaze fixed on the swords before him, while Harold instructed him to act. Wondering Liner's motivation for seeking strength, Harold demanded a reasoning, departing the air heavy with strain and uncertainty around him. Considering his admiration for the chivalric order, Liner recognized that gaining power could allow him to become a protective knight. Meanwhile, Colette confronted a team of bullies attempting to seize her pendant, resisting fiercely while shouting for them to stop at once. The bullies taunted her, holding the pendant high. Colette hesitated but readied herself to escape, hoping Liner would intervene in a moment. Colette fought urgently as bullies grabbed at her, shouting in protest, though the attackers ignored her pleas completely during the struggle. One of the aggressors shoved Colette violently, her cries echoing through the site, intensifying the turmoil as she struggled to resist. Liner reached it at the chaotic setting, fury blazing in his eyes, confronting the bullies to safeguard a person weaker than himself. The bullies jeered at Liner, doubting his capability as a knight, while Liner readied himself to respond firmly and confidently, delivering a strong retaliatory blow. Liner hit one of the bullies, causing Colette to feel comfort and admiration for him. Tracking the struggle, Liner sat beside Colette, proposing apologies for appearing weak while assuring her that the pendant had been recovered securely. Smiling softly, Colette sensed secure. Liner promised protection, providing her comfort beneath the tree as they rested together in peace. Reflecting on his previous weakness, Liner committed to rigorous practice, intending to become a knight capable of saving Colette and other people. Watching Liner's resolve, Colette identified his resolve, quietly appreciating the progress and courage that he demonstrated through his deeds. Presenting the pendant back to Liner, Colette declared it a symbol of his knighthood and her enduring confidence in him. Watching Liner with admiration, Colette quietly vowed to assist him in pursuing his ambitions, her gaze filled with optimism and warmth. Gripping his blade tightly, Liner surged with resolve, getting ready to confront forthcoming challenges and grow stronger through every encounter he faced. Focusing on those he must safeguard, Liner understood that to defend them properly he had to become the strongest feasible knight. Harold emphasized that power was required, and Liner absorbed the lesson, emphasizing his commitment to strength, ability, and heroic responsibility. Channeling power into a surge of power, Liner entered brave mode, sensing lighter, resolved, and inspired to pursue his knightly ambitions. Experiencing an unprecedented burst of strength, Liner at last sensed capable of confronting Harold directly, assured in his abilities and preparation. Charging towards his rival with blade in hand, Liner readied to engage Harold completely, utilizing all the power he had gained. Their match commenced with clashing swords, precise movements, and severe strikes, departing spectators astonished at the ability and resolve displayed. Quietly watching Colette observe Liner's progress, impressed by his growth and ability, her eyes reflecting admiration and astonishment at his improvement. Pressing ahead aggressively, Liner forced Harold into a defensive stance, showcasing newfound strength and unwavering resolve in the heated exchange. As his power diminished, Liner's body grew heavy unexpectedly, making him realize that his previous surge of strength had at last ended completely. Regardless of losing some strength, Liner continued to fight, pushing his limits while reflecting on how much he had grown so far. Understanding his progress, he admitted that only yesterday he would have failed to reach this point, finding satisfaction in small victories. Harold stayed steadfast, reminding Liner that he was not yet a match. Yet Liner refused to succumb to discouragement or anxiety. The pendant slipped from his grasp, symbolizing the test that stayed onward, while he readied to continue defending those he cared about. Thinking of Colette's assistance, Liner readied to unleash every ounce of his power in the approaching combat, resolved to give everything, stomping firmly onto the battlefield. Power radiated around Liner, displaying his unwavering resolve and refusal to surrender regardless of the overwhelming difficulties present. Focusing all of his power, Liner ready to blow with every bit of strength, determined to make a decisive impact immediately. Swinging with complete commitment, he confronted Harold directly, indicating his purpose to overcome obstacles and assert his capabilities completely in fighting. Harold countered with the Nemesis blade, and the ensuing clash became a violent, explosive match, challenging both fighters' ability and limits. A colossal explosion shook the arena, throwing power and debris across the battlefield, departing the crowd stunned and astonished at the spectacle. The shockwave knocked spectators, along with Colette, backward, yet Liner remained standing firm, keeping balance, focus, and concentration amidst the turmoil surrounding him. When the dust settled, Liner caught his breath, reflecting on the intensity of the combat he had just endured. Completely drained, Harold neared, lifting Liner cautiously, showing respect and acknowledgement for the effort, endurance, and resolve that Liner had displayed throughout the fight. Lightly chastising Liner, Harold remarked that if he had fought at this level from the outset, the conflict would have been different. Carrying drained Liner, Harold stayed impressed that the youthful knight had successfully activated Brave Mode twice, defying demands regardless of the challenging circumstances faced. Watching cautiously, Harold observed that Liner's criticizes and defenses initially failed to meet the usual requirements, yet he had persisted regardless of limitations. Reflecting on Liner's perseverance and progress, Harold recognized the youthful main hero could truly have circumstances, resolve, and support aligned in his favor. Resting with the pendant clutched tightly, Liner received Harold's acknowledgement that his power could eventually rival the older knights, demonstrating genuine respect for him. Harold Stokes remained standing alone, victorious as the arena announced him the winner. His red eyes glimmered with quiet resolve, indicating a new chapter. From above, spectators watched. Norman identified Harold's power and cunning, impressed by the unexpected display of ability. Norman decided to approach cautiously, understanding the importance of alliances. He decided it was moment to stake his claim in the developing strength shift. Meanwhile, Erika Sumeragi pushed through the dense crowd, wrestling to keep pace. The excitement and turmoil tested her endurance. At last, she reached it, taking sight of Harold. A mix of comfort and anticipation crossed her confront, as new challenges awaited them both. Erika Sumeragi observed Harold Stokes closely, worry and optimism mixing in her gaze as he remained standing firm. Harold turned to address her, wondering if Liner was truly the one she trusted, his expression sharp and observant. Erika hesitated but confirmed, insisting that Liner was protecting her regardless of his small stature, her voice steady. She defended Liner with resolve, asserting that he was not weak and had earned her confidence through loyalty. Harold at last nodded, acknowledging her perspective. Erika sensed comfort, realizing her belief in Liner's power had been validated. Harold Stokes walked beside Erika Sumeragi, his expression cold as he dismissed weakness and feeble ways of life. Erika followed quietly, her thinking weighed down by his remarks, uncertain yet resolved to act. She wiped away tears, realizing she needed to reach Liner and guarantee his security. Motivation renewed in the medical room. Liner lay quietly, recovering from earlier incidents, his arrival fragile but steady. Erika entered, calling his name. Comfort and worry mixed on her confront as she saw Liner awake, prepared to assist him. Colette knelt beside Liner, checking if he was hurt. She assured herself he was unharmed thanks to Harold's careful handling. She inquired for Liner's protection, hoping he would stay by her side, her voice complete of confidence and resolve. Encouraged, Colette smiled, telling Liner that though he lost to Harold, he could surpass him following moment. Liner hesitated, realizing Colette knew of Harold's reputation. He pondered Harold's control and noble earlier period. Colette clarified Harold's earlier period assist to her and her mother, giving context and showing his subtle, enduring direction. Colette thought on Harold's power and noble background, impressed by his sorcery and calmness. Liner recalled Harold's harsh remarks, but understood the lesson behind them, realizing the direction was meant to teach. Regardless of his frustration, Liner admitted he didn't feel resentment, comparing the training to lessons from his mother. He decided that if they ever battled again, he would surpass Harold, resolved to grow stronger. Colette decided to call the doctor and Orbal, worried for Liner's well-being and making sure he received proper protection. Colette observed Liner from afar, thinking about Harold's power and how much he had inspired them both. Norman neared with a cheerful proposal, suggesting that Liner join the chivalric order to develop his abilities further. Harold and Itsuki emerged, curious about the newcomer. Liner remained standing quietly, assessing the circumstance and listening cautiously. Norman commended Liner's performance in the fighting tournament, emphasizing the admiration he had earned through ability and courage. Liner's gaze hardened, spotting Harold's subtle reaction. He sensed strain and readied himself for the difficulties onward. Norman clarified to Harold how the fighting tournament served as a warm-up and tested the town's strongest. Harold corrected him sharply, insisting he be called by his name, not Lord, asserting his authority. Itsuki watched the interaction, noting the strain and the complicated relationships between Harold, Norman, and other people. Norman suggested having a long conversation, acknowledging the complexity and hoping to smooth over misunderstandings. In the tavern, Harold thought on the tournament's challengers, dismissing weaker participants while recalling the strong red-haired competitor he had nearly evaluated inviting. Harold glared at Norman, unimpressed by his teasing, keeping a firm and unyielding demeanor. Norman laughed nervously, watching that Harold seemed to have a soft spot for Liner regardless of his stern condition. During matches, Harold treated Liner differently, guiding and supporting him, almost as if coaching him directly. From the sidelines, observers observed Harold drew out Liner's potential, encouraging growth and power in subtle ways. Colette asked the year's requirement for the chivalric order, learning Harold was only 13, yet already displaying remarkable ability and control. Norman complimented Harold's talent and potential, noting how few could meet the high standards required for the chivalric order. He invited Harold to fight evil alongside them, presenting the opportunity as a method to pursue justice and safeguard the weak. Harold leaned back confidently, dismissing the ideals of so-called justices yet ultimately agreeing. He declared he would join, asserting his own terms and will, ready to act on his own vision. Harold Stokes readied himself for an important journey, departing the familiar city behind while the carriage traveled slowly through countryside terrain, confronting household concerns. He quietly conveyed that the prestigious chivalric order operated under the king's command, highlighting plan, household legacy, and the dangers involved cautiously. His companion doubted his motivations, suspecting pride in household status, but Harold stayed composed, departing motives subtle and undefined to prevent conflict. Reflecting quietly within the moving carriage, Harold contemplated his prospect's path, choosing firmly that his decisions would serve only his personal goals exclusively. Later, Harold clarified how he impressed a passing knight during a public brawl, gaining recognition and opportunity to enlist at a youthful years. Receiving admiration from his household, Harold's accomplishments were celebrated, emphasizing the recognition of his abilities and the pride they sensed in him. Preparations for an elaborate feast commenced to honor Harold, marking both respect from his household and his forthcoming departure's significance. He officially announced his purpose to travel to the royal capital to join the Holy Royal Chivalric Order, instructing other people on updates. Allies evaluated the difficulties of distant expression due to his lengthy journey, understanding that messages could face unavoidable delays along the way. Harold reassured them quietly that urgent matters could be handled through the Summarajas, showing foresight and readiness for the risky path onward. Worried for Harold's security, his allies inquired what deeds they should take in emergencies, while he calmly recalled previous subjugation experiences effectively. Imagining the worst-case setting, they feared Harold's death, but he responded assertively, refusing to be treated as fragile or overly shielded. Harold issued a stern warning, implying that any threats to his security would provoke grave repercussions, asserting command and dominance over situations firmly alone. He thought on the prior conversation, spotting Zen's worry yet dismissing it with quiet amusement, remaining mentally readied for difficulties ahead. Considering joining the chivalric order at the earliest years, Harold identified circumstances accelerated his timeline, reminding him why he initially chose this path originally. Contemplating the chivalric order's symbolic strength, Harold recognized other people sought power carelessly, but he carefully pursued this path strategically, valuing reason over force consistently. Watching human desire for reputation and strength, Harold stayed detached, evaluating motives critically, prioritizing calculated thinking rather than tracking others blindly for selfish gain. With feast preparations complete, Harold maintained a composed demeanor while participating, demonstrating composed readiness for forthcoming incidents, and the focus his presence drew. Gazing out of the carriage window, Harold observed the landscape and waving allies, appreciating the transition between the familiar earlier period and uncertain prospects. Upon arrival at Amaziel's royal capital, Harold took in the vast cityscape, mentally getting ready for forthcoming difficulties within the chivalric order's complex surroundings. Harold marveled at the royal capital, watching flying ships and bustling power, realizing the city's significance as the kingdom's central hub of strength. Walking through crowded streets, Harold cautiously located the designated meeting location, making sure situational awareness while navigating unknown surroundings with deliberate caution and accuracy. Encountering an old acquaintance, Harold received a warm greeting, discussing the chivalric order and reaffirming his agreement to join, solidifying commitment and prospects deeds. The companion made light jokes about Harold's reliability, yet he stayed grave, focusing on responsibilities and prioritizing mission objectives over playful distractions efficiently. Reflecting on his status as the youngest enlistee, Harold recognized he would meet talented individuals capable of influencing the order's background. Preparation deliberately onward. Vincent van Westervoort, vice captain of the Holy Royal Chivalric Order, worked diligently at his desk, keeping focus amidst towering shelves and stacks of organized papers. Momentarily pausing, Vincent evaluated his forthcoming duties cautiously, surrounded by extensive books and records, preparing mentally for efficient management of responsibilities and duties. An aide neared warily, spotting Vincent's severe focus, causing him to respond appropriately, regaining composure and maintaining authority within the professional setting without disruption. Wandering subordinate Shannon regarding the day's practice schedule, Vincent cautiously reviewed operational plans, making sure smooth coordination and accurate oversight of all organizational activities and duties. Shannon hesitated while providing details about Cody's unit, taking Vincent's focus and suggesting potential unexpected developments requiring his careful consideration and management efficiently. Cody reached it energetically to check on Vincent, delivering updates about activity within the chivalric order while greeting him cheerfully and keeping lively enthusiasm persistently. Vincent cautioned Cody that a newcomer's enlistment exam would begin shortly, instructing him to prevent causing disturbances while overseeing operations quietly and systematically, suggesting Harold could make the examination interesting. Cody hinted at the newcomer's potential, anticipating unexpected developments and abilities that could control the chivalric order's prospects successfully. Watching quietly, Shannon observed Cody's boisterous personality, habitual power, and lively behavior while remaining observant to ongoing operations, and the dynamics of interpersonal interactions professionally. Vincent thought quietly on Cody's temperament, understanding his wild nature had existed since birth, while acknowledging that Cody understood appropriate behavior regardless of naturally boisterous tendencies consistently. Shannon evaluated Vincent's kindness towards Harold, noting it could be excessive, adjusting her glasses, and reflecting thoughtfully on the repercussions of this treatment. Cautiously, Vincent contemplated the unwelcoming surroundings for some individuals, realizing he personally experienced oppression and was potentially the most out of location. Recalling Harold's confinement vividly in context, Vincent van Westervoort remained standing as the vice-captain of the Holy Royal Chivalric Order. Kazuki watched him quietly on the moves, reflecting on Vincent's early rise at 14, 4 years earlier. A combat at Beltis Woods weakened the order. Justice exploited Cody's retirement and burned-out state, eventually perishing at Cody's hands. Departing a complicated legacy behind, Kazuki wandered through the courtyard searching for Cody confusion, and worry marked his path as he tried to understand the sudden absence of his friend. Crowds encircled Kazuki, drawn to his arrival. Many admired his condition, whispering about his charm and innocence. Vincent noticed the collecting and neared. Kazuki's focus shifted as the lieutenant readied to lead, and the order assembled for their following mission. Vincent brought Kazuki to the order, clarifying his arrival to the assembled knights. Kazuki followed quietly, unsure of why he had been chosen. The knights murmured in astonishment, wondering Kazuki's legitimacy. Vincent tried to compose them, pointing that this was a rare but important circumstance. Vincent announced that Kazuki would be tested against Harold, treating the meeting as a kind of enrollment trial for the boy's abilities. The knights scrutinized Kazuki, noting he did not meet the usual years or training standards, yet they readied for the forthcoming test. Vincent reassured Kazuki, praising his extraordinary potential, while Kazuki sensed a mixture of surprise and anxiety at the sudden focus. Vincent cautioned Kazuki that underestimating Harold would bring risk. He handed Kazuki his blade, getting ready him for the forthcoming trial. Vincent promised Kazuki assistance for his following promotion if he managed to defeat Harold, startling both Kazuki and the watching knights. He commended the knights for their battlefield training and rigorous practice, reminding them that their abilities were valuable regardless of Kazuki's youth. Vincent smiled, emphasizing that even a 13-year-old boy like Kazuki could not be underestimated. Departing the knights impressed, the troops' attitudes shifted, inspired by Vincent's confidence and Kazuki's potential. The boy readied mentally. Sensing the test onward, Kazuki readied for the trial against Harold, reflecting on the opportunity to evaluate what he couldn't during the fighting tournament. Vincent encouraged him to give his most effective. Kazuki earned Vincent's admiration, impressing both the lieutenant and the knights watching the trial. The elite forces recognized his potential. He recalled earlier period matches, realizing the strain he sensed now was unique, unlike any he experienced before. Even in battles against monsters, Kazuki sensed the thrill of confronting a mighty rival, understanding it as a craving for victory rather than anxiety. Harold's instinct for combat emerged naturally in Kazuki, and he boldly challenged any rival, stepping ahead with confidence and resolve. Vincent confirmed with Lieutenant Cody that Kazuki could test Harold. The knights observed eagerly as the trial began. Kazuki accepted the test, expressing resolve to give his all and showing respect to Vincent before the trial. Vincent set the conditions, emphasizing staying alive for both, and signaled the outset of the fight. Kazuki readied to confront Harold. The combat started intensely, Kazuki moving skillfully while Harold attacked fiercely, challenging the boy's reflexes and instincts. Following a strained exchange, Kazuki unexpectedly defeated Harold. The knights and Vincent were stunned, acknowledging his ability and potential for prospects trials. Kazuki remained standing over Harold, indicating the following challenger. Vincent and the knights observed as Harold's defeated body lay on the ground. A knight stepped ahead, hesitantly getting ready to confront Kazuki. The boy stayed composed, analyzing his opponent. The match began with rapid strikes. Kazuki skillfully blocked and countered, challenging the knight's technique while keeping focus. The combat intensified as the knight launched mighty criticizes. Kazuki dodged and retaliated, keeping his calmness and accuracy. Following a swift exchange, Kazuki's ability prevailed. The knights were astonished, and Kazuki steadied himself, prepared for the following challenge. Kazuki called the following rival ahead, readied and composed, while Harold lay defeated, and Vincent observed from the sidelines. A knight stepped up warily. Kazuki studied him, anticipating movements and adjusting his stance for accuracy. The match started intensely. Kazuki blocked and countered each blow with ability, keeping focus while reading his rival's patterns. The knight became annoyed, wrestling against Kazuki's calculated criticizes. Kazuki maintained command, moving firmly and avoiding dangerous swings. Kazuki thought on combat instincts, noting that his opponent's deeds mirrored innate motions, just as he had experienced in fights against monsters. Kazuki watched his rival, noting that the motions and openings mirrored those he had encountered in the game. He identified the knight as Naida from Brave Hearts, verifying his hypothesis about predictable enemy patterns. Kazuki smiled confidently, anticipating the knight's movements, while the rival's strain grew as the boy readied to blow. The knight looked stunned and annoyed at Kazuki's mastery, realizing the fight was nearly over before it had completely begun. Kazuki taunted playfully, challenging the knight to entertain him with more effort, assured in his command and ability.